Last night on TikTok, we had the pleasure of interviewing one of the most controversial figures in UFO history. Joining us last night was Richard Doty, the alleged architect of the UFO disinformation campaign and the man at the centre of some of the darkest stories in ufology. He's a former US Air Force Office of Special Investigations officer, and in this exclusive interview, we asked him some of the most hardest questions that no one has ever asked him before. Here's the 3-hour unedited version of the entire interview, so strap in, guys. I hope you enjoy.
I left the intelligence service in 1988. I went to work for the state of New Mexico. Then later, I worked for Dr. Putoff, the Institute for Advanced Studies, for 12 years. And in 2007, I just went out on my own, and I've been writing scripts. I'm employed at Gaia. I just started the 27th season of Cosmic Disclosure this week at Gaia. I have a number of other YouTube videos out there on Doty Chronicles that I made over there in UK a couple years ago.
Amazing.
And that's how I got into the business. I'm now just a freelancer. I still go out and assist at movie sets. I've written 3 scripts. 2 of them had been purchased by a motion picture company for future movies down the road somewhat. And so that's me. That's Richard Doty. I'm totally out of the intelligence business, although there's a lot of people that still say that I'm connected. I'm a member of the Advanced Working Group, which is a group of retired intelligence officers, and so we still have our hands in a pot, so to speak, but we don't do anything but try. We're trying our best to promote disclosure. So that's who Richard Doty is.
Wonderful, mate. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
I've got a quick question for you, Richard. So, at what point did you realise that your work with UFOs and disinformation would have such a lasting impact, not just inside government circles, but on public belief?
Okay, say that again. What's the question?
Sorry. At what point did you realise that your work with UFOs and disinformation would have such a lasting impact, not just inside government circles, but on public belief?
When I left government service in 1988, I was hounded for several years by UFO researchers trying to get the real story, but I couldn't talk about anything. I still was under an NDA until 2002. So I realized how much interest there was in the subject of UFOs, not just here in the United States, but all over the world. During my time with Dr. Putoff, I traveled a lot with him and for him. And then I realized that my name was connected to, since my name was connected to the Paul Benowitz case, and my connection with William Moore during that time period, I was always connected to UFOs and to disinformation. Although, in actuality, within the government, we don't call it disinformation. We call it deception operations. But I've never been involved in any kind of disinformation program since I left. Although I'm connected, people claim I am, but I'm not. And so the importance I realized was after I left a government service.
Thank you for that. Thank you. So someone wants to ask him something else.
Yeah, Richard, it's Mark Christopher Lee here. Very, very nice to talk with you, fellow filmmaker on Gaia as well. I just wanted to ask you about disinformation. I know it's not the word that you use in government, but what do you think is going on in the UK? Was there any disinformation programs in the UK that you're aware of? And I speak with regards to possibly Rendlesham Forest UFO incident, whether that was subject to any disinformation.
Yeah, there was. I worked with in the MOD during my time in Europe, and MOD, as you know, has their own intelligence network, not quite like MI6 or MI5, but they have feelers out all over the place.
Sure.
And the UK had a earlier program, not just Rendlesham, but going all the way back to the late 60s. They recovered something off the coast between, just west of Blackpool.
Wow.
In the ocean between there and Ireland. And that was a secret for many, many years. There were people within the MOD that knew about it, but it was kept secret for such a long time. But that particular craft was turned over to the Americans sometime in the 70s. I don't know exactly when. And we took it and we examined it. I think at the time, British intelligence or the British scientific community wasn't quite ready to understand or analyze a extraterrestrial craft, and we had been analyzing them since at least the 40s. So that's how. And Nick, Nick.
Nick Pope, yeah.
Yeah, Nick Pope. Him and I have worked together on set a number of times, and he tells a couple stories that I'll let him tell his own stories. One, the story I just told you, and another story about something that happened up in the Shetland Islands.
Great, thank you for that.
Richard, you just mentioned about a secret area sort of close to Blackpool. Was that anywhere in the proximity, if you could answer, near RAF Machrihanish?
I think that's the closest RAF base, yes. Yes.
Okay.
That's one question. So within the UK, is there any locations where the reverse engineering craft, and how deep is our country in this? Would you know?
Well, Nick would have to tell you that. I'm not as well versed in the UK side of the UFO or UAP as Nick is, but I do know that there's some locations, secret locations that the Royal Navy used up near the Shetland Islands and also in Scotland. Prestwick was one of the locations where that was a submarine base, and one of the underground facilities they used to analyze UFOs. But that's really the only thing I know regarding UK's examination of a UFO craft.
Sure.
Amazing.
Do you mind? One more. Go on.
Oh yeah. All I was going to ask, I was going to kind of hop into the disinformation dose, if you don't mind. And all I was going to ask, were you tasked with spreading disinformation, or were you protecting the deeper truths at hand? That was one thing I've been thinking about.
Well, during the late 70s and early 80s, one of my jobs, and it was just me, the group of other counterintelligence officers, we were tasked with penetrating UFO groups, recruiting people within the groups to provide us information. MUFON, APRO, NICAP, some of those older groups. And we did. That's what we used Bill Moore for. We weren't really feeding disinformation. We were more concerned about where they were getting their information.
Yeah.
Because MUFON or NICAP at the time, or APRO back in the 70s, had a very sophisticated internal collection system. and they were getting information from sources within the government, mostly Air Force personnel. And so we wanted to know who they were, and so we penetrated the group, planted people in those groups to get that information. Now, there were times, I have to admit, and I have admitted, that when we found somebody that was leaking something, then we started the disinformation program, whereby we were disinforming the group through a source.
That's very interesting. Thank you so much, man. That's pretty cool. And
Richard, there's been a debate over your involvement with the Paul Benowitz case and other disinformation campaigns. Looking back, do you feel what you did was justified? And if so, in service of like what higher goal?
Well, I had a job to do.
Yeah.
And during the Paul Benowitz case, he wandered onto a highly classified program, which involved the Air Force drone program back in the 1980s. It was highly classified back then. And we had to convince Paul that what he was seeing wasn't drones, but something else. But Paul was already a believer in UFOs. He was a member of MUFON. He was thoroughly convinced that what he was seeing with UFOs and aliens. And so we didn't have to feed him much information. He believed it on his own. And so what I did, it wasn't me. I mean, there were a lot of other people involved in this operation. We assisted, or we facilitated his belief in that it was UFOs. And that's what we did. Do I regret anything? We have, anytime, I don't know if any of you have ever been in the military or in the intelligence service, but anytime you conduct an operation, there's an operational plan. A very, very well organized plan. And that's done in Washington. And so when we gather the initial information, we send it up to Washington Defense Intelligence Agency. They formulate a plan, send it down to me or us in the field, and we implement it.
Yeah.
So we were following instructions.
You were a good soldier, in other words, like, followed orders.
Exactly. We did what we were told to do and how we were told to do it. Now, I probably would have done some things differently if I had to do it all over again. But again, it's unfortunate that Paul got sick, but you got to understand that, number one, Paul was not in very good health in the first place. He was a chronic smoker. He had diabetes. He had all sorts of problems. And we actually, at one point in this operation, sent him to our own doctors to evaluate him and put him on the right medication. And so I know there was a rumor out there that we drugged him. Well, what we did was we took his medication. We had it analyzed by a pharmacologist and a doctor, and found out that some of the medication he was taking wasn't the right medication. So our doctors prescribed the right medication for him. So that's how that worked.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Richard.
Yeah,
I have
Richard.
a question, if I'm all right. Am I okay to jump in?
Sure.
Richard, some people believe you were not just spreading disinformation, but that you yourself may have been manipulated by higher forces. Have you ever considered that you were also a pawn in a much larger operation?
Yeah, I that's crossed my mind many times. I was one person. Actually, in the Paul Benowitz case, there were 9 of us involved in that operation. We were being instructed by headquarters, a guy by the name of Carl Dale, who's been in the UFO community. He's long dead, but he was running the program. There was indicators. We saw indicators that Paul was just one part of a bigger operation. Unfortunately, we didn't have the need to know what that other operation was or what that bigger picture was. And so, yeah, you're right. We were used in a bigger operation that we never really knew what it was.
Does that not
later?
Sorry, does that not anger you that you've been taking the flak for so many years when you yourself was potentially used?
Yes, very much so. And after I left government service, I had the occasion to meet with Carl years later, probably 10 years later, 8 or 10 years later. And we had to sit down and discuss. And he told me that you were part of a bigger operation and we couldn't get you involved with some of the other things that we were doing because it could have jeopardized the bigger picture that was being conducted by somebody else. I didn't believe that at the time, but I accepted what he said because he'd had many years in government service, and so I felt that he was a boss at the time, and he had a bigger picture, and he had to run all these other operations regarding the subject. So, yeah, it did upset me. I did confront him, but one of the things I still look for is that big picture.
Sure.
Still haven't found that yet.
Okay. Can I just jump in and Richard, you mentioned previously about deflecting Paul Benowitz from a secret drone program. What's your take on the recent drone flap in the US and the UK? I spoke to Nick Pope recently about this, and he puts it down to a lot of bad actors. What's your take?
Well, I actually went to New Jersey back in December. The witnesses, I have a relative that lives in New Jersey, and we watched the drones. And most of what we were seeing were recognized drones. They had the lighting system. The frequencies that were being generated were private or government drones. A lot of other things that people were seeing were identified as aircraft. There was airports around the area. But we did see things that we couldn't I never could understand or couldn't explain. A drone that changed into a ball of plasma. Now, I don't know that technology. I don't know that we have that technology. I think that most of what people saw were government drones trying to understand these other the other flying crafts that were morphing into something that they didn't understand. And so I think that we either the extraterrestrials or maybe a terrestrial source like the Chinese or the Russian had that technology. But since then, there's been a lot of information that came out that indicated that, number one, Russia doesn't have anything like that, nor does China. So that only leaves extraterrestrial as the answer. So I think, and this is my own belief, that some of those things that people are saying were in fact extraterrestrial crafts.
Can I just jump in and follow on from Mark there? Do you know the exact date when you realised that this actually might be real?
In February.
February
of this year, 2025.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Incredible.
Wow.
That's way ahead of the curve because it didn't really hit the news until sort of late October, November time, really. So, wow, that's phenomenal, Richard.
Can I just jump in regards to the crafts in question? From your knowledge and maybe kind of your thoughts, what do you reckon, or where do you reckon these things are from, if they are NHI in nature? Do you have any sort of inkling, possibly, if you were to just throw a random dart out there?
Well, what I knew back in the 70s and 80s were that we had contact, there were 5 different extraterrestrial races that had visited Earth. And they were all different. They had all different technologies, all different biologics. There weren't any of them were the same. So it's really difficult when you see something out there to identify it. Now, as I understand, and as of course, just stuff that's on the internet, that we are in contact with maybe 9 other species. So it's really difficult. And I'm not a scientist. Okay, I teach math. I do teach math, advanced math, but I'm not a scientist. So when I see or read about things, I relate or I rely on other professionals to evaluate whether that is in fact an extraterrestrial craft and where it could have come from. Now, I don't have any information. I've never been briefed into the scientific side of the investigation of these things. So, because I'm not a scientist, even though I worked for Dr. Putoff, we did do some things within that time frame, that 12 years, but I didn't have anything to do with the identification of these crafts. I know that I'm pretty sure that the United States government knows where some of these come from.
Yeah.
But me personally, I wouldn't know.
Can I just ask, you mentioned 5 species in particular. Would you be able to say anything more on what specific species they were, or is that too much?
Well, it's been out there for a long time. The species, the names of the species were, I guess, DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, gave the identification or named them because they have strange names. We talk about number 1, the Greys. The Greys are the Ebens, the ones that crashed in Roswell or Corona, New Mexico in 1947. We had one in captivity from 1947 and 1952. Plethora of information out there on the internet about him. He was in captivity at Los Alamos. He told us about his race. I think we named it the Ebens. That's the Greys. And the next one is the Archeloids. They come in different heights. They have they appear to have a grayish tint, and I don't know if that's the suit they wear or that's their natural skin. They have a protruded ear and nose. They're distinguished by having double joints in their elbows and their knees and their hips. Their feet can turn in different directions. They have they can appear differently to different people. I mean, as if they can change their appearance. That's the Archeloids. The Quataloids are the most dangerous ones. They appear to be praying mantises. They're insect-looking. They're the ones who are responsible for most abductions, as far as I know. They can also hypnotize humans or put a human into a trance.
Wow.
And that's the Quataloids. The Hepaloids are they can appear to be similar to Ebens. They're gray in color, but they're taller than the Ebens and more hostile than the Ebens. The Ebens, the Greys, the Ebens are the docile group of extraterrestrials. And of course, this is what I was briefed in way back. Things that might have changed over the years. And finally, the Trataloids are the blonde-looking ones, Nordic. They can be human-looking, but their eyes are entirely different. The irises are different. So those are the 5 that I knew about. Now, you know, there's information since then about the Repaloids and the Palladians and the others, but I don't know much about them.
Thank you so much for answering that question. I appreciate that.
I've got a quick question, Richard. I've asked this to loads of people. So, Zeta Reticuli star system, that's where apparently a species of critters come from. Have you heard anything about that star system? Because Lazar said one of the crafts he worked on that where it originated from, and he read a document that stated that he ain't got a clue how they knew, but that's what it said. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the Ebens came from Zeta Reticuli, the star system. The home planet we called LP9, and I think the Serpal story, if you know what that story is, came from that planet and that particular species of extraterrestrials.
All right, thank you.
Okay,
Richard, just quickly, Richard, you mentioned about 5 alien species. I mean, do you know expanded details about them? I mean, I know there's a lot of stuff that's already in the public domain, but like, do you know which ones were actually able to breathe oxygen and which ones weren't?
That's a good question. The Ebens were able to breathe mostly, they required less oxygen than we had in our atmosphere. You know, we have about 22% of our atmosphere was oxygen. What they found when they captured EBA-1, he had equipment, and they didn't bring that equipment to him until sometime later. But they realized that he would suffer somehow breathing, and they realized that he was breathing too much oxygen. So he had a device that was a depressor, an oxygen depressor, lowering the oxygen to what his body could withstand. So that's the Ebens. The quantiloids are unique ones because they actually have to breathe a little bit of methane. Their atmosphere contained methane. So they would, when we had them in captivity in Area 51, they had to have a special environment which contained methane. They had, in order to keep them alive. And they also ate differently. They didn't eat food anything like us. But the most ironic thing that I found, and a doctor, a very, very good friend of mine, Dr. Christopher Green, explained this to me, is that everyone, regardless of where these ETs come from, whether they're different planets, the commonality among them all is they still require water. They all require water, which is really, really unique if you think about it. And so, and some of them, I think it's the hepaloids, they produce their own food. They have a little sac and their body generates the food for them. They don't eat anything on the outside. And so there's other idiosyncrasies about some of the other races that they're not equipped to talk. They don't have any voice boxes. They can't make noises like we do. The Ebens can, and some of the other races can, but some of them can't. So the only way to communicate with them is through telepathy or thought transfer or consciousness, things like that.
Richard, just you said before, EBA-1, you went back to the craft and retrieved his food that he'd brought with him. What were the pellets that he was eating made up of?
You know, I don't know all the facts about that. You know, the one person that has talked about this over the years and probably has the best knowledge of EBA-1 is Linda Howell. Linda Moulton Howell was able to, in 1980, interview the Air Force captain that lived with EBA-1. She had like 5 or 6 different interviews with him, and he told her the EBA story. So when I'm talking about it, that information is coming from what she gave to the press. I've only read one classified document back in the 80s that talked about EBA-1, but it didn't describe a whole lot about him. I know that he had his own food in the craft, and they retrieved it along with some other things, but the food eventually ran out. So we had to the government, for the last, I think, year and a half or 2 years, had to figure out how to feed the guy, and it was male, And so they were able to find some common food substances on Earth to be able to feed him, to keep him alive.
Interesting.
So in your opinion, these different species that are, visiting us, for want of a better word, they're all physical beings. Have you any experience of any kind of interdimensional beings of any sort, or is that a no?
I have never. I've heard of others talking about it. My former employer, Dr. Putoff, wrote a paper a couple years ago, about 3 years ago, about transdimensional extraterrestrials. But if you think about this, if you got an extraterrestrial race that came here from 100 light years or 1,000 light years, and it might have taken them some time to get here, they're certainly not able to go back and forth.
Sure.
So some of them are so advanced that they're able to go into a different dimension and live or stay, come out into our dimension when they want to. So that's kind of the idea that I have.
Sure.
But as far as knowing if there were interdimensional, transdimensional, I don't know anything official about any of that.
Thanks. And you said about Linda Moulton Howe. Can you what's your take on the Majestic 12 documents? Are they real, or was that disinformation?
Well, there's two different things here we're talking about. The MJ12 documents and the presidential briefing papers that I showed Linda Howe. There's two different things. In 1983, I was tasked with contacting Linda Howe, bringing her into the intelligence office at Kirtland Air Force Base, and showing her a document. Now, the background on this is that Linda Howe was a researcher. She, for a number of years, for a television station in Denver, Colorado, she was intimately involved with abductions and cattle mutilations. And she wrote a book about it. And she also had contacts within the government. We wanted to know who those contacts were. So we set up an operation. I didn't. The government did, where she was coming to Albuquerque, New Mexico. So everything was set up for me to contact her, bring her in to the OSI office, and show her a document that came from headquarters, and try to convince her to work for us. And that's the operation. And now the document that I showed her was a presidential briefing document. I had only got that document about 2 hours before she got there. I got it through an Armed Forces courier. And so I didn't know what was in it until I read it. I didn't thoroughly read it, but I looked at it and I gave it to her to read with instructions. She couldn't photograph it or make notes or anything like that. So after she read it, I had contact with her for many years after that, but I read it. A lot of information in there was factual, but I'm sure a lot of was disinformation. I would say, because if you're running a counterintelligence operation, or especially a counterespionage operation, you have to give the real stuff to make the person believe it, or make the opposing intelligence service to believe what you're given. So I'm sure that a lot of information that she was given was fact, and some of it was fiction.
Okay, thank you.
Now the MJ12 documents are entirely different. Those things surfaced through a guy by the name of Jamie Shandera. He got them. I'm sure, I'm almost convinced that was part of another operation involving a guy by the name of Lee Graham, William Moore, Jesse Reese, other people. And Jamie Shandera was supposed to do something with those documents, and he didn't do it. I wasn't initially involved in that, but I knew Jamie. He brought those documents to me, unbeknownst to what they were or where he even got them from. He had made copies, but the original he brought to me. When he gave me these documents, and this was in San Francisco, California, he brought it to me, and we met. I met him at a restaurant. He had it in an envelope, a manila envelope. He said, "This is what I got in the mail, and I want to know if they're real." So when we left the restaurant, we went to a parking garage or and I looked, a car park, you would call it, and I sat in a car and I looked at it, and I realized that the markings and everything on there was classified. So I told Jamie, I said, "Jamie, I'm a federal agent. I have to confiscate these because this is a classified document." So that, although I kind of figured he'd made copies, I said, "How many copies did you make?" And he said, "Well, I can't tell you that." When I got the document, I transported it. I flew back to New Mexico, Albuquerque. I showed him to my supervisor. He said, "Looks real to me." And then we sent it up to headquarters, DIA. And then, so that copy, the original, was taken care of. But all these other copies spread out around. Of course, the internet wasn't in existence back then, but and that's how the MJ-12 documents. I would say that some of the information was factual and a lot of it wasn't.
Could I just ask a question on that? In the past, you stated that some documents are real and some are seeded. How can the public know the difference? Is there any sort of key factors in that?
No, the public wouldn't know. Only people within the government that had access to the actual classified information would know.
Okay.
It's written. There's a group of people called the Special Means Committee, which is in the Central Intelligence Agency, that write these things. They're smart. They're brilliant. And they make it sound real. And they can write it in any different languages. I mean, I've seen, when I was in Europe, I've seen things in Russian and German, and that would have fooled anybody. So they're professionals in doing that.
Amazing.
Richard, I just have a couple of questions. First off, thanks very much for coming on. As long as I remember looking into this subject, your name has always been there. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. Going back to the early days, Beexel Security. Allegedly, they have oversight. Are they tier 1 operatives, mercenaries, if you will, under the guise of a security firm? And do you know if they've ever conducted any wet work ops to keep this secret a secret?
Who is this? Who are you talking about?
Beexel Security.
Backwater?
Beexel, Beectal.
Oh, Beexel. Yeah. Beexel, yeah. Yeah, Beexel was heavily involved in the program.
Okay. They still are, I think, aren't they?
Yeah, I would say yes. Yeah, I would say yes. Yeah.
Okay, and one more thing. Jeez, where's it gone? Sorry now for this. The deceptive indications warnings or false flag ops. 2027 is getting mentioned a lot. Do you know anything about that, or can you elaborate on that?
I wish I did. I hear the same rumors that everybody else does. Okay. I know from people like John Ramirez and others, Admiral Carpenter and others, that something is supposed to happen between September of this year and the beginning of 2027. I don't know what that is. I wish I did. I can guess just like anybody else can. I might have a little bit more inside information to think that could very well be an extraterrestrial presence that's going to occur. but I can just guess like you can.
Yeah. Okay, look, and just one more thing with Bechtel. You know the way there was PSYOPs back in the day where they'd conduct alleged alien abductions. Do you reckon Bechtel would have had a hand in that?
Yeah, not just Bechtel, but EGNG also.
EGNG as well.
Yeah, EGNG had a specific section within Area 51. In fact, EGNG employed former British SAS.
Right.
A lot of their Tier 1 people that I met on an operation, and I wouldn't say a lot, there were 2 former British SAS majors who were running operations for EGNG. And they'd spent years in the SAS, so that was a Tier 1 force. And within that, because I met this one major, I maintained friendships with him. And when I went to the UK in 2022 to make, I did the Awakening in Blackpool, and then I came back in October and did one in Manchester. And then for 1 month or nine weeks, I filmed the Doty Chronicles. And he introduced me to a former British SAS officer who we ended up planning to make a documentary about the SAS involvement with UFOs. And but that was kind of shut down because somebody got to him and told him, no, you ain't gonna do that. But he actually took me and some others to Shetland Island, to where a secret SAS facility existed, where we, United States Tier 1 forces, went over there and trained SAS personnel on handling or dealing or fighting extraterrestrials.
Okay.
So you guys, it wasn't just SAS, because there were, we also trained some German commandos and some French, and I'll call them your brother's service in Australia, Australian SAS.
So kind of a pre-galactic federation thing going on there, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I want to bring
you mentioned about an event that's going to be happening between now and 2027. Now, obviously, there's a lot of talk about Project Bluebeam, so on and so forth. And Jerry McCall-Bell came out only a few weeks back saying that there's plans in place to put an alien spaceship in the sky in 2027. So, what my question to you was, do you know any more sort of in regards to Project Bluebeam, and if they were going to be putting an alien spacecraft into the sky, is this the reason why NASA are buying so much glitter? Because that's one of the main components to put a hologram in that makes a hologram. Because if you were going to be putting a spacecraft into the sky, that's the only, a mothership. That's the only way that you'd be able to do it feasibly.
Good question, but I don't know anything about what Jeremy. I mean, I'm friends with Jeremy, friends with George Knapp. I've been on his show a number of times. I've had numerous conversations with Jeremy. He asked me to help him with a film, but regarding what's going to happen and his idea of this alien craft, I don't know anything about it. And I within our advanced working group, we have former NASA, NSA, CIA, DIA people. In fact, we have former directors, and I think they would know something about this, and they don't know anything about it. And again, it could be classified, and he got information that I didn't get. So I can't say that Jeremy isn't telling the truth, but I just don't. I've never heard anything relating to that. But I do know we have the technology, the holographic technology, where we can in a battlefield, we can project things into the sky, making the enemy think that we have 1,000 aircraft up there.
Yeah.
Where in actuality we may have just one. We have that technology. Now, as far as alien crafts, I know I know Lazar has said this. I know that we had extraterrestrial crafts at Area 51. I know it. I saw them. I was told. I read documents. They were there. They weren't reversed engineered. They were.
Have you seen them yourself?
I saw them myself.
So this isn't third party. You actually seen these yourself,
up close and personal. In fact, I was involved in an counterintelligence operation to keep what was other people were seeing secret, and because one was being flown by us, not by the extraterrestrials, inadvertently landed near a small community outside Area 51, outside Nellis Test and Training Range. And so the people saw that. So we had to go in and convince them that it was advanced craft that we have. I mean, something to that effect. Anyways, so I know we have at least 3 different types, different entire technologies.
Okay.
The Cash Lantern craft, if you're familiar with the Cash Lantern case in 1980, that was an extraterrestrial craft. We couldn't understand the propulsion system. So they took the propulsion system off. They put our experimental nuclear propulsion system on and flew it. And it was flown around Nellis Test and Training Range for months. And then we're going to fly it down to Texas, to Webb Air Force Base. As they were flying, they had a problem with it. And so that craft was, in fact, an extraterrestrial craft. I'm almost positive it belonged to the quadriloids. I would say 90% back, it was a quadriloid craft that we got. I don't know how we got it. I can't say I know that. But I know that it was flown. It was eventually brought back. And I was there, Area 51, when they brought it back. And they had to actually destroy it.
Right. Can you describe the craft, Richard?
Yeah, it was about 50 foot in diameter. It was a saucer shape, totally saucer shape. The bottom part of the craft had an elongated, like a tube, and that was the propulsion system. The government had to put in vents for our nuclear propulsion system, so it was modified. So if you looked up at it as it was flying, you could tell it was extremely different. I mean, it looked so strange to be flown, but it also had some type of an anti-gravity system. And again, I'm not a scientist. I don't know that. I don't know how that worked. And it took a long time for our pilots to understand it. And as I understand, the interior of the craft had seats, and the pilots had to sit there with their hands in indentation, handprint type of things. And we couldn't, I guess there was a problem with, our brains couldn't fly it. So they had to put some kind of avionics and controls in there. Again, I wasn't inside the craft. I don't know what it looked like. And there were a lot of problems with the craft because we tried to put our technology into it. And I think that's what happened. But the craft was huge in shape. It was elongated. The bottom part of it looked real strange. The top part of it had little portals around. Again, I didn't see the interior of the craft, so I can't tell you what that looked like.
Could I just ask, in a different aspect, you can just completely deny it if not. But is it possible that some of these craft aren't just machines, but living organisms or consciousness assisted vehicles, where reverse engineering the hardware misses the real point? Like, could this be like a biological or conscious type aircraft in nature? What do you reckon?
Yeah, you got it. Absolutely. Some of them are. Some of them, the materials, the outer materials, are living tissues, so to speak.
Mm.
And the whole craft is almost an extension of the extraterrestrials flying it. You're absolutely right. There's some of them that are like that.
Wow.
And that's why there are some that we found, or at crash sites or wherever they found them, that we couldn't fly them from there. That we had to somehow transport them back. The ironic thing is there's most of the early crash recoveries were in the southwest of the United States, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, and Utah. Why they were centering there? Maybe because of our nuclear testing. I think that there's always that theory, and that's my theory, is when we detonated the Trinity site, the first nuclear test site in New Mexico, that advertised us into the universe. And because right after that, that was July of 1945. And then, of course, we had the two detonations over Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August of 1945. Shortly after that, in September and October of 1945, there were a number of sightings of strange things flying around New Mexico between Socorro and Bingham. That's exactly where the Trinity site is. That people saw, but they didn't know what they were. And they thought they were military. And so that brought the extraterrestrials in. And that's my theory. And that's why they started visiting us.
Me on too,
I've just got one more thing I wanted to... Oh, sorry to butt in again, guys. Just a follow-on to the...
Can I jump in? Can I add something to your question?
Yeah, go on, mate. Go on.
Richard, do you think that with Jake Barber recently coming out saying that there's Indonesian children that are taken for purposes to help with psionics and stuff like that, it's to help with these crafts, to try and fly these crafts?
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't get the first part of that. My sound went out.
So Jake Barber recently did an interview with Jesse Michaels, and he said that we have these children, we get them from Indonesia, and they're cared for and stuff like that, and it's for psionic purposes, and it's to try and do these, connections with these crafts and to summon these crafts and stuff like that. Do you think there's any connection with any of this stuff that you're speaking about now?
No, I don't align myself at all with Jake Barber or what he says. I think most people within the community, I only speak for myself.
Okay. I need to ask you one more quick question. Do you think this is a new era of disinformation that we might be being fed, and you're lost with this, and you're sort of out the loop? Do you think this generation now is being told something totally different? Because from the generation where you've put this out there, which you're an integral part of the UFO and alien story, regardless of whether people like you or not, you are a big part of it. Do you think now the new generation is getting new versions of Richard Doty in other forms, telling different information? Do you think we're now seeing that?
Absolutely.
And
I think the government.
Do you think potentially Jake Barber may be this?
I think my own personal feeling is that Jake Barber is, in fact, a disinformation agent. If you really look into his past, he wasn't what he said he was. He came out and said he was a tier 1 commando with the Air Force. Well, the Air Force comes out and says, no, you're not. You never went to combat control school. You actually flunked out of combat control school. And then he changed his story.
Is that not typical, the way they hide each other? Is that not typical compartmentalization?
No, it's not, because number one, he comes out and says it's DD Form 214, which is your
Okay.
military record for anybody in the United States military, was classified. The Air Force comes out and says, the major, Air Force major, chief administration says, there's no ever been a DD Form 214 classified. There's stuff within the DD Form 214 that's redacted, but it's never been classified. In fact, she even released the regulation that says it's not ever been classified. So that's my take. Is I don't know why he's doing it, but I read in that he is part of a disinformation program. That's what I read into it.
Is it just him, or is it the whole psionics movement? What's your opinion on CE5? Is it a valid tool?
No, absolutely not. The scientists that I work with within Dr. Putoff's group,
Oh, you're watching.
and
Need
and
Sheila.
the complexity of the extraterrestrials, they aren't like us. There's not a single race that is like us. Their brains are different, their tissues are different, their blood is different, their society is different, their makeup of their body is different. Now, how are we human beings going to psionically contact an extraterrestrial?
Can I give you another thing as well? They're being open and honest about it. Now, how would you be able to put security measures in place if people are going to learn this? How could you put security measures in place that whatever we're contacting isn't going to harm us? That's a national security risk, right? If people have psionic abilities. That's probably more of a weapon than anything else.
Good question.
Well, there is a lot of things that I had access to in my government time, and also with Dr. Putoff, because we worked on DARPA projects that I can't talk about. But I can guarantee you that the government, the United States government, knows how to do these things. They're entirely different from what these other people out here, Jake Barber and Jason Sands, is talking about.
Could this be, sorry to interrupt again, could this be then a sort of an inside war going on here?
There's a movement within the government, within the U.S. Space Force, which is our new branch of the military, and also within the DIA to disinform the public. They don't want the truth out about UFOs. They don't want aspects of the program they don't want anything to do with. And they're not cooperating with the groups. They're not cooperating with the legislators. We have three branches of the government: the legislature, the executive branch, the president. He runs the intelligence communities. And then there's the courts. I don't think the executive branch has given anyone authority to release anything at this time. That's the way I see it. People are trying to get the information out there, and when they try to get the information out there, the government counters it with disinformation. I see it. I did it. I know it. I went to school for a year back in the 70s on how to do this. And I tell you, the government is really, really good at it.
Richard, sorry to cut in, guys. Can I just ask one question on that? With your incredible experience on that, what are the tactics of the current disinformation agents, and how do you recognise them? What would you look out for in that?
Well, I would look out when somebody, some legitimate researcher, and I think Jeremy is a legitimate researcher. George Knapp is a legitimate researcher. One of the best, I think, is Linda Howell. And when they start going after something, and then you see the government or some third party out there start feeding different information about that. Like, excuse me, when Linda started talking about Antarctica, suddenly Heckers comes out. Oh, I was there. A couple other people come out. I was there. I know this. And that's a sign that there could be disinformation being countered. Because we call it deception in the military. We got to deceive the truth. If you know the truth, I'm going to come after you with deception to make it sound like you don't know the truth. And that's what's going on.
You've just answered one of my other questions. One of my other questions was going to be, do you believe there's a genuine effort happening right now for government disclosure, or is there still part of a controlled narrative?
I think the government is doing everything in their power to keep disclosure from happening. Let's face it. If you followed the subject for 5 years or 10
26 years. I'm 26 years deep into this subject.
Okay, 26 years or 40, 45, 46, 47 for me. Disclosure's already happened. We know it's out there. The government just hasn't acknowledged it.
Why do you think? What are they afraid of?
Well, number one, they're afraid of the reverse engineering.
Okay.
They don't want our knowledge, and I guarantee you, I can't go into it, but I guarantee you, we've learned a lot of great information, and we developed some amazing technology from the extraterrestrials. It's sitting away out here in a closed bunker.
And it should be, I think. But we should at least be told that there's alien life out there on ultra-terrestrial. Do you think any of this could be ultra-terrestrial life in the oceans?
I believe it. I strongly believe that there's life in the oceans, and I'm convinced of that by Admiral Carpenter. I did a couple shows on a guy about what he says. He was a submarine commander in the Indian Ocean. He worked. The U.S. had a naval base near Perth, Australia, the western coast of Australia, and they would train in the Indian Ocean. And the reason they would train down there, the submarines, is there's no ship traffic down there. There's very little ship traffic down there. But there were times when he saw something coming from the sky into the water and diving deep into the ocean. Now, a submarine can only go so deep. And they would go as deep as they could go. But at one particular time, they went as deep as they could go, and they could see huge lights down there. Like there's a city at the bottom of the trench 20,000 feet under the ocean.
Wow.
So he was convinced. And all the different stories that I've heard from other people. There's a Australian fisherman that had a story on years ago. He was out. He owned a company. He would take his fishing boat out west of Perth or east of Perth and fish. And one night, his crew, 11-person crew, they just finished getting all their fish in, and he's in the captain's deck, and they call him out. He said, "Captain, get out here real quick." And he goes out, and there's a flying saucer above his fishing boat.
Wow. And
he goes, "Oh my God, what is this?" And this is back in the 70s, okay? He thought, well, is it a Royal Australian Coast Guard? No, didn't know what it was. It was a haze that came over the boat.
Wow.
And the 11-person crew lost time. They just
right.
And they wake up, and it's a different day. Several days later, they all have different recollections of what happened. But every one of them had the recollection that they were taken down to an underground city in a bubble. Wow. They were in a bubble looking up at fish and things, and they were deep under the ocean. And it wasn't just him. Every one of the crew experienced the exact same thing.
Wow.
How do you explain that?
Could I just ask a question on a technology side? Because a lot of people are more so focused on unidentified flying objects. Is there any sort of backwards engineered tech from liquid bionics, I guess? Like, because humans have a liquid robotics system now where they can morph and manipulate and rejoin shape. Is there anything like that the ETs have on Earth, on land? Like they can morph on land or something that's not flying? A different type of technology that we're quite unaware of.
Miami, the mall.
Yeah, they do. There are certain races of ETs that can change their appearance of crafts. They can change the appearance of the craft, and they can change their own appearance. And so, yeah, I don't know a whole lot about it because I'm not a scientist, and I was never actually briefed into the program. But I know that technology existed for the extraterrestrials.
Interesting. Thank you.
Would you give any credence to the Miami Mall incident, Richard?
The Miami incident?
Yeah, the mall. Do you remember the mall? Something was meant to have
No,
appeared.
I think that was pretty much discredited. I think they, if you listen to the news conference and they produced the 6'5" Miami police officer who was in SWAT gear, and he was the one that was walking against. He was backlighted against the, and they created that thing again. It looked like it, 20 foot tall, and the aircraft, the local airport didn't shut down the aircraft. I think that was I don't. I just don't believe it was anything other than what the police and was reported. I don't think it had anything to do with extraterrestrials.
Okay.
I've got a question. So I was watching you on YouTube, and you're on about a praying mantis escaped from captivity and unalived a civilian. Can you tell us about that and how that ET escaped? Because you said the ET was shot, praying mantis was shot dead. It was found after it killed the civilian, and also that the son of that civilian joined the Air Force, I believe, and he worked on the base. And he asked about the incident, and then he came out saying that was my dad that was killed. Can you tell us about that? And was there any other murders from ETs to humans?
Well, I know about that case because I was stationed at Area 51 and that happened, I believe, in 1984 or 5 timeframe. There was one that escaped. We had it in an area called S2 Annex. They actually call it a detention facility, or excuse me, a containment facility. I didn't have access to that. I knew where it was, so I don't know exactly how or what it was made of at that point, but it escaped and it went north, just outside the northern perimeter of the Nellis Testa training range. There's an abandoned mine area called Silverbow, and this family was camping up there. It was a popular camping site for people, and this family was camping up there, and the father, it was a father, 2 children, a male and female, and the mother. Military police came up there and told them that they had to leave because there had been an escaped convict, an escaped military person. And so they were packing up to leave. And as the husband got out of the vehicle to pack everything, it was a station wagon. And I'm sure you know what that is.
Yeah.
Something attacked him. And he yelled to his wife, "Drive away, drive away, drive away." And so she slid over, got in the driver's seat, and drove away. His son, which was at that time 10 years old, or I can't remember, something like that, saw his dad being attacked by some monster. And what happened was this thing probably tried to abduct, but ended up killing the man. He brought the body, the creature brought the body back inside Nellis Testa training range. Military police responded and shot and killed the ET. The boy, the mother was compensated. The government privately got compensated the family. Although the body of her husband was never given to her. The government did something to that. Years later, the son had joined the Air Force, and he was stationed at Nellis Air Force Base as a military policeman. And he had detached duties at Area 51. And one night, he was working with a senior sergeant. And the senior sergeant, or the son, asked the senior sergeant about the incident, if he ever knew about an incident that happened at Silverbow. And the senior sergeant, who was working at that time, years before, said, yeah, I remember that, but it's all classified. The son said, well, I know what happened. And the senior sergeant said, how would you know what happened? He says, I was there. The man killed was my father. And so that's the story.
Wow. Mark, you had a question you was going to ask a moment ago. What was that?
Yeah, I've got to go soon, but thank you very much for your time, Richard. It's been very enlightening. I just wondered if you heard, I've been contacted by one of my lab contactees, and they wanted me to ask you if you heard of a Black Ops program called Magic Radar, MAJIC Radar. It's like a MyLab operation. No? Okay, I just wondered.
No, never heard of it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Lovely. I've got one question. I was going to talk about, I know you're well versed on Bluebeam, and I just want to get your opinion. If you were assigned to run the Bluebeam project today, in the age of deepfakes that we currently have and AI, how would you update the plan to make it work? Like, how would you push that?
Well, it's more technical. I would have to know what our state of technology is today, and I don't, because I left in '88, and although I worked for Dr. Putoff and I know something, but I don't know what the state of our technology is. So I would, first of all, would have to know what the state of our technology is in order to implement that into the Bluebeam program. So it will be difficult to answer that question.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, mate. Anyone else?
Welcome.
Richard, in your opinion, what modern day sightings, what would you say the percentage is in NHI and is what actually reversed engineered technology?
Well, when it comes to advanced exotic technology that you see flying, I would say that would be NHI. That we got a lot of technology from them. I would highly recommend sometime if you wanted to really see advanced or unexplained phenomena, go to Nevada, camp outside the northern perimeter of Nellis Test and Training Range, north of Tonopah Air Force Base, in the summertime, and just watch what you see flying over the test range. There's things out there that defies logic. You see things flying. We did a documentary a few years ago, and unfortunately, that documentary that I was part of, that filmed around the test site, is being blocked by the government. Even though we cooperated with the government, we gave him all the film. We let him review the film. They initially released a lot of it to us, and then they came back and they're fighting with the producers now. Anyways, we saw things out there that you can't explain. Maybe a scientist could sit there and explain it, but when you see a ball of light just lift from the ground level up 10,000 feet and sparkle, and then split into smaller balls, fly around and come back together and land. I don't know what technology that would be.
Wow.
Thanks for that.
Richard, because it's on TikTok and we've told our followers they're going to be involved in this, it's an exclusive live with yourself. Are we okay to ask some questions from our followers on the TikTok live? We've got nearly 400 people in the live watching right now.
If they're
then don't worry.
Common sense. If they're good questions.
They're good people. Like, I've got 230,000 followers, and I'd probably say most of them have got a lot of common sense. I'll be honest with you. So
sure.
So we'll start asking. Luke will ask the questions out because you can see, and I can see the chatter as well. It's just that we don't want them to feel left out. We've brought you to TikTok. We want to show you that TikTok's a friendly place. We know about your past, we know about everything, but regardless of whether people like you or not, they want to hear your story. and you've done some good work regardless of what you put out there. The work you've done has been for national security reasons as well, which people forget about. And I think people need to understand this, and this is what we're trying to promote out there as well. And I think it's important because I think in this day and age now, there is new Richard Doty's out there in the UK, in the US, and this will help them maybe, fish them out and stuff like that. So, we're not...
There is one question in the chat, and it was one question I wanted to sort of touch base on. One of the things that you were involved in leaking at the very beginning was Project Serpo. And this is something that divides the UFO community very much. Some people think it's true. Some people think it's been debunked. And somebody is asking in the chat, is there any truth behind Project Serpo? And if not, why was it leaked as disinformation?
Well, you'd have to go back a long ways to understand Serpo. In 2005, there was a guy by the name of Victor Martinez who had a stream. He would email stream. He would send emails out about UFOs. Somebody sent him, and we know who it is. We know who the guy is now, about the Serpo story. Sent over a period of 6 months, bits and pieces of the Serpo story came out. I heard about it, and I got involved in the email stream, responding to questions. Did I ever hear about Serpo? I heard about something back in 1980. I read a document that had Serpo in there, but I didn't know everything there was to know about Serpo. Now, jump ahead to 2006. A guy surfaced by the name of Joseph Yeager. Joseph Yeager, who we know was former DIA. He retired from the DIA in 1997. And then there's other people involved. He comes out and he talks at a UFO convention about Serpo, along with a guy by the name of Bill Ryan. Joseph Yeager says everything you heard about Serpo is fact. So it spread like wildfire. And, there were UFO forum sites that got a wind of it. People started tearing it apart, adding information to it. But if you just look at what was originally put out, that in 1965, there were 12 American astronauts that left on a mission to a planet called Serpo. Supposed to have been a 10-year plan. They ended up staying for 12. Some of them came back. Some of them died. Some of them stayed. And then in 2009, a guy by the name of James McKeever surfaced. Now, James McKeever is supposed to be the commander of that team. Now, there was a whole group of people that went down to Phoenix, where he lived, in a special home, to talk to him about it. He answered every single question. We listened to a number of tape recordings, cassette tape recordings, of his alleged time on the planet or going to the planet. Now, is this all disinformation? Was he disinformation? I actually believe something happened. I think that there was a mission, but there was so many people that jumped in and discredited it, and then made up stories on the internet about it, which was false, fake stuff that came out that was probably disinformation by the government, that ended up to be we don't know if it really happened. So you gotta read it and believe whether it did or not. He died. McKeever died, and he was a colonel, United States Air Force. He died in, I think, 2012.
Thank you, mate. I've got a question from a
question
user.
here.
Cool. Sorry, Mark, are you going to carry on or?
Yeah, okay, you go. I'll go next.
So there's a user called Imminent UFO that's asked quite an interesting question, but I'm going to word it like this. Are you aware of any recovery sites where the craft was too large to move, where what decisions were made to build facilities directly over those objects instead? Do you know anywhere that's had that, where a craft is too big and they built something over it where it is?
And just a bit of background on Imminent, I actually know him. He's actually been to Congress hearings. He was at the David Grush one. So he does go to these hearings. So he is, he's an intelligent individual. So he's asking a question here.
There's two incidents involving crafts that either were too big to move or too dangerous because the substance of the craft. I believe, and I don't know this 100%. One of the crafts was in South Korea that was too big to move. The other craft that they had to destroy was in northern Laos, the country of Laos, up near the border with Thailand China and Burma.
Was that a national security threat if they had to destroy it in that way because it was too close to those borders at the time?
No, I don't think it. I think it had something to do with the material. When they were trying to move the material, it was toxic to humans and caused some humans to be. In fact, the story, a brief story, because it's a long story, but local villagers found it, and it'd been there for a long time. I guess I don't know exactly how long. They first thought it was something from the Vietnam War. It was, an American craft that was shot down because we'd bombed Laos a lot. But then two of the people that actually dug into it got deathly sick. I don't think they died, but they got sick.
Yeah.
So then they told the local villagers and the provincial chiefs, and eventually got down to the government in Vientiane, Laos, who sent a team up there, and they didn't know what to do with it. So they actually asked the Americans to come in to see if it was one of theirs from the Vietnam War. And this was like in the 80s. I don't remember when.
Yeah.
And that's how we got involved.
You said that it was destroyed. One in South Korea had a facility built over it, but the one that was destroyed, any idea how they actually did that?
I think they brought in explosive ordnance disposal people, and they set up charge. I don't know. I just know it was destroyed. It seems, the story is really long because there's a lot of facets involved in it. The Chinese got involved in it. Anyways, the end part of the story, all they said was it was destroyed. I don't know how that. I don't know what happened.
I've got a question here from one of our listeners, Sammy. You've pretty much answered it already, Richard. UK-USA cooperation with regards to retrievals and that. There was an incident in Wales, Pentork, where there was US jets in the sky waiting on this thing to come in. But can you elaborate more on, basically the USA and the UK do cooperate with regards to NHI UAP retrievals or any information regarding, they do co-op, don't they? To a degree where the US will take all and go.
Yeah, there were a number of cases that I knew of where the UK assisted the government. There was one classical case was the one in Aberystwyth, I think that's the name of the place. If you
Aberystwyth.
Yeah,
Aberystwyth.
That case. Something crashed. MOD came, Air Force OSI comes, the craft actually took off and crashed in the ocean. The Royal Navy and the Air Force Navy went out and recovered it. That's so. Yeah,
do you know much about the Pentork incident in Wales? In my opinion, it's bigger than Rendlesham Forest.
Only what I've read. I don't have anything personal. No, I don't.
We actually have Kaz Clark on TikTok. Are we going to get a Richard Doty TikTok, by the way, after this live?
I don't know.
I think we've shown it's a friendly community, and you've said in previous interviews that you're outed from it. They don't want to know you, and we're trying to bring you back into it because we think you can be an integral part of maybe helping. Obviously, there's going to be that element of doubt because of what you did as your job, but I think I think you're an honest man, and for your age, you look very well. How the hell are you 80 years old? How are you 80 years old?
I'm not 80 years.
You should have died 30 years ago. You should have died 30 years ago.
Number one, I don't know how that age got on the internet, but I'm not 80 years old.
How old are you?
I'm 74 years old.
You're still correct for 24. That is legitimately on the internet, though, that you're 80 years old. I've researched it, and you're debunking it. So you've lied about your own
disinformation on you.
Back in the deception
there's the clip.
There's the clip. 80 years old? No, I don't.
There's the clip. So So it's Richard Doty lied about his age.
Yeah.
That's it. He's 80 years old.
I never told anybody I was 80 years old. That was something that
disinformation.
So on the internet, it says you were born 1944.
There actually is a Richard Doty that was born in 1944, but it's not me.
Your doppelganger, huh? You got a clone. I knew it.
That's Richard Doty.
I was born in 1951.
Can I ask? I want to ask you about this one. This is one of the most fascinating ones for me. The alien interview tape, 1997. Can I have your opinion on that?
100% legitimate.
Wow.
Yeah, so.
Now, I don't know whether to believe you because of your past life, but I genuinely believe that tape to be real.
Yeah, me too.
You can believe me or not believe me, but I can guarantee you that's absolutely real.
I genuinely believe that tape is the most legitimate thing out there showing an alien being interviewed, and people just dismiss it. And I think it's because of the time it was released.
Wow.
Because this was spoken about on George Knapp on the record show in 1987 with John Lear, and he mentioned that there's a tape coming out soon that's going to be an alien interview tape. It ended up being 10 years later.
Yeah.
But there was also a letter wrote by John Lear that mentioned Bill Moore, which you spoke about, which he did infiltrate at one point. So this is why I'm asking this question. Did you have anything to do with Bill Moore maybe not releasing that tape or these tapes that he had possession of? Because he had possession of two tapes, apparently. One with the government military, and one with the alien interview.
Bill Moore, the connection with that was involved another agency, not me. I had nothing to do with that. Bill Moore was being used by another agency, and so I don't have any connection to that incident. But the tape that John Stewart did such a great investigation on.
We've got him next. We've got him live next, by the way. He's a friend of yours.
John, he's a very, very good friend of mine. The most ironic part of that tape is how we were able to communicate with extraterrestrial. We were able to find the U.S. government had, we call it in the bullpen. I don't know if you know what a bullpen is.
Like say that again.
Yeah. A baseball bullpen, pitchers waiting to come in. And these were monks, Catholic monks, that could read the aliens' minds.
Wow.
And asked John to explain that. Carthusian monks, they're called, and they had a unique ability to communicate with extraterrestrials.
What are they again? Artesian?
Can I ask you a question? Richard? But what crash is that alien supposed to be from?
Kingman, I believe.
The what? Right, okay, the Kingsman. Is that the
Kingman crash?
Was that is that the 1989 one?
1953.
Oh, 53.
Wow.
When was the tape supposed to be recorded?
In the 80s.
Yeah. So the alien was alive from the 50s to the 80s.
Is that the J-Rod?
I thought it was a Kalahari.
J-Rod is a different species of extraterrestrial.
Okay.
So here's a question.
Richard, there's a question from the chat here. Do you know anything about the orb showing up all over the world now? And what do you make of it?
Wow. Yeah, I've seen it myself, and so they're being seen all over the world. Japan, Indonesia, every place. All over. I think there was some form of a reconnaissance by the extraterrestrials. It's like a reconnaissance device that they would send out first before they send out a craft.
Mm.
If you've seen the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I'm sure you all probably have seen that.
Yeah.
Remember, the first crafts that came into the Wyoming location was these small orbs.
Yeah.
That's actually the way the extraterrestrials do it.
Send a probe. Military
Just
uplink.
Why do you think it's happening though? I mean, if you think these are reconnaissance and these are NHI drone craft, why in such abundance?
Good question. I don't know. I wish I did. Maybe because each one of them have a different mission, or that they're trying to throw off our radar system or the early warning systems that we have. That could very well be.
Forward operational probe. It's simple military logistics when you think about it.
I've got a question I'm going to ask from the chat from a user called Martin, and he asks if humans have broken the treaty between us and the ETs, and are we on the brink of an invasion anytime soon? What do you reckon?
I personally don't know of any treaties. Everyone within the government that I know, they don't know any treaties. So I don't. There may be, but I just don't know anything about any treaties.
But you don't think there's any truth to the Greater Treaty in 1954?
Eisenhower, no.
I never heard anything. I never read anything in any kind. I mean, I've read literally thousands of pages of classified documents involving the subject, and I've never read anything about any treaties.
Okay.
What do you think?
And that doesn't mean there isn't any. I just don't know about them.
What do you think about the Holloman Air Base footage? Do you know the 8-second clip?
Yeah. That's real.
So that was real. Well, it was debunked, wasn't it? It was debunked about a couple of years back by this guy, and was it a Falcon jet, Dan?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Some Falcon jet coming in because they put the actual longer video out there, and it's shown it coming in, and that was the light at the front of it, and it was actually showing the wings coming in, and it was actually one of the Falcon jets. So I'm not dismissing the whole Holloman Air Force Base story, because I do believe there's some truth to that. But I think the footage, the 8-second clip, that was deliberately said to be real when it was actually just a...
Well, there's an actual real clip out there about the Holloman. The Holloman case is interesting because the craft originally landed near Socorro, New Mexico. The Lani Zamora case, if you look at the dates, exactly the same dates, April 24th. Same. It landed first at Socorro because they had the coordinates wrong, and then it landed at Holloman. I know a lot about that because if you really have done research on it, my uncle, Major Edward Doty, investigated that case. So he's dead now, but he's, I've talked many hours to him about that case.
Amazing. I've got a question from I know we're jumping the gun. I'm just trying to get a few of our viewers' questions in then, just to get your point of view. And on the current state of where people are potentially engaging with these ETs, do you believe there are risks involved, physical, mental, or even spiritual, and when civilians attempt to initiate contact with these non-human intelligences?
Yes, there can be extreme danger to bodily harm. I've seen it. I've investigated it. They might first appear to be friendly, but then they have a mission, and they're going to try to manipulate you, or examine you, or take something from your body, some kind of fluids or skin samples, or something like that. So they are all friendly and docile. They can be dangerous. I've listened to horror stories from abductees who didn't want to go there, and they did. And then I listened to some legitimate stories from people who made themselves available, and then were very regretful after they had contact.
Richard, Wendell Stevens, you know Wendell Stevens?
Oh, I knew Wendell very, very well.
Yeah, so Wendell Stevens spoke about these aliens that would they would use this certain enzyme, and it was the same enzyme that was in cattle, so like cows' tongues and certain other body parts would have the same enzymes as human beings, and they would feed, but they would sort of use like an enzyme shower, and they would shower themselves into feed, but they would also wipe away the excrement on their arms and stuff like that. Any information on that, whether that's true?
I've heard the same story from Wendell. I've known Wendell. He, of course, passed away, but I knew him from the 80s on, even when he just got out of prison. And he's been a friend. He was a friend right up to the day he died. I listened to probably almost all his stories, and he showed, he used to, at UFO conventions, he would take a group of us into a different room in a hotel, just a certain number of people, and show us things, a little film clip or something that he had that he wouldn't want anybody else to see, or documents that he'd had that he wanted us to read. So yeah, I've heard Wendell's stories, whether some of them might be exaggeration or fact. Wendell did exaggerate in a few things, but
it's a concern, because it makes you think about whether these people that go missing, which is there's millions over the decades that have gone missing, primarily children, whether they're being used for purposes of maybe these to fly these conscious crafts. If they're not used for that purposes, it doesn't matter what purposes. But where are these children going? We're not seeing them. They're adults now. Some of them will be a lot your age. Where are the children? The missing children. This is the thing that I try and push out there. There is something going on. Jake Barber. This is what worries me, Richard. Jake Barber says that they are put in fight or flight mode. And if you're into your conspiracies, you know where fight or flight mode is also put into, which is the reptilian side of things, where it's about the blood stuff, which I don't want to get into.
Yeah.
But it makes you think whether he's trying to cover this up by saying they're using for psionics, but they're really using them for that purpose. So I'm trying to decipher why would they use these children for the same type of things and have to put them in this same type of mode, fight or flight mode, when over the years you've read about the reptilians, the adrenochrome and all that kind of stuff, to put them into that. But now they're saying it's to be used for psionics abilities, to be able to summon these crafts. Have you got any opinion on
that? It's really a mystery of why, number one, why so many humans, and it's just not on Earth, it's all over, just not in the United States, it's all over the world, that go missing every year. I really delved into that some years ago, reading everything I could, going to Alaska, listened to some people up there explain what happened in Nome, where all these people disappeared, in an hour, all these things. Why are the extraterrestrials doing what they're doing? That's a problem that humans try to rectify using human intuition. And first of all, we can't understand extraterrestrials. We don't know how they think. We don't know how they ration. We don't know how they operate their brain. One particular species of extraterrestrials have 12 lobes in their brain. So it's hard to us to try to realize or rationalize what they do and why they're doing it.
Richard, Sammy asks, do humans have any alien DNA, and do you have any knowledge of human and NHI hybrids?
Yes. excuse me. I did an entire program on Gaia with the Katie Smith story. Katie Smith was a female. She was born in Montana, state of Montana. She grew up on a ranch, normal life. And at one point during college, her junior year in college, she disappeared, only to reappear sometime later. When she disappeared and reappeared, she realized that she wasn't 100% human.
Wow.
She was a hybrid. She ended up entering the United States Air Force. She became an intelligence officer just like me. She worked with me. We realized that she wasn't, and this is in the 80s, early 80s. We realized that she wasn't
totally kosher.
She was different.
Yeah.
She was different. Yeah. And even then, we realized that there was a possibility of hybrids, even in 1980. We didn't understand it that well, but we knew it. She assisted us in understanding hybrids, what the DNAs were, and how she was different. The fingernails, the earlobes, the irises, all these different things that you can detect that particular species of extraterrestrials, hybrids. So, and she assisted us in finding other hybrids.
Wow.
And over the years, she's out of AFOSI. She still works for the government. I have conversations with her periodically. She's in Washington, D.C., but she's a hybrid. And she's one of, if you can believe it, millions of other hybrids.
Wow.
The Earth right now.
Yeah.
Could I just ask a question on the hybrids themselves? There are long-standing claims that people with Rh negative blood types, especially O negative, are disproportionately involved in abduction cases and contact experiences. Were you ever briefed on any research targeting or interest in Rh negative individuals?
No, I was never involved in any of that.
Okay. Just thought I had to clear that up. Just interest, because a lot of people were asking. Thank you, mate.
So we've got in the Congress hearing not so long ago. I can't remember the lady's name. The Congresswoman said, "We've been told they've been given evidence that there are human hybrid programs going on." Do you think that could be disinformation that's being given to Congress in these hearings as well, and they're trying to manipulate the narrative of the Congress hearings, and we're believing it? Because one thing I need to point out is these, like Mike Gold, Lou Elizondo, Tim Gallaudet, and whoever it was, I can't remember the last one. Who was it? I can't remember. They all write books and they all tell their story in the books, but when they're asked under oath, they seem to not be able to speak about it, and they don't seem to give the answers that they like to give in the books. Do you think these are grifters? Do you think they're trying to grift and they're trying to think, or do you think these are basically doing the job you were doing, but they're doing it in this day and age in a different way? And making money from it, because I don't think you was making money from it, was you, when you was doing it?
Look, I was my job.
It was your job.
I had a salary.
You was getting paid.
I had a salary.
You was getting paid. What I'm trying to say is, you was getting paid to do a job. Where I think people are getting paid now a lot more money and able to make books, making a lot of bullshit up. And this is what I'm trying to say to people are trying to make loads of stories up, putting things out there, and just muddying the waters of this subject. It's a total different world to when you grew up, Richard. That's what I'm trying to say to you. So we're trying to use your experience here with your job role in the past as what's going on now in this day and age to try and help us. And I'm not trying to say that you're going to help us. You might still be muddying the waters. We don't know. But, I'm hoping that you are giving us some honest answers tonight, and that's what we want.
If you look at Lou Elizondo, he was a counterintelligence officer. He did what I did, the same thing what I did. Yeah. He operated. He conducted counter-espionage operations, counterinsurgency operations, deception operations. So, and then he left. Now, whether he's doing that now, I don't know. I have no inside information on him or Claudette or Grush. Grush, I think, is as legitimate as can be. The reason why they can't talk in front of a open hearing is they are limited to telling non-classified information. So you hear them talk. The Congress people are asking questions that can only be responded with a classified response or answer, but they can't talk about that. They have to go in a secure environment called a SCIF to talk about this. Now, I can guarantee you that Senate Representative Luna and some of these others that are asking have already been briefed on the program. There's a number of people within the Senate Intelligence and the House Intelligence Committee that have been briefed. They have clearances and they can be briefed. And so they know the truth. They just can't talk about it because it's classified. And they also only get what they need to know. They don't get the whole story. Nobody gets the whole story. I don't get the whole story. When I was in, I wished I got the whole story. I only got what I needed to know to do my job. Now, and so, and I always tell an example is, I was one of 4 intelligence officers working at Groom Lake. The guy across the aisle from me, across the hall from me, he was working on something. I didn't know what he was working on. He didn't know what I was working on. Okay, when I had to help him, he could brief me on what I needed to know to do
the job.
That's the way it works in the government. And so, an executive, remember, in the United States, the executive branch, which is where the intelligence communities are, where the president is, they're the holder of the secrets. Congress doesn't have any secrets. They can't go out and collect secrets. Only the intelligence community, okay? And everything under certain laws, you'll hear Title 10 of the United States Code, Title 18 of the United States Code, Title 43 United States Code, and Title 50 United States Code. All that stuff is highly classified. All the special access programs are in Title 50. So you hear people say, well, you got to have a Title 50 clearance. And people say, well, what does that mean? That means you have to have a special clearance to get access to special access programs.
A quick question. So I was watching the Jay Stratton, and he was saying he gave locations to Congress of bodies of craft. And obviously, I'm guessing you know where they keep bodies, where they keep craft. You've seen actual footage of recoveries. Would you ever go to Congress, tell them here's locations, here's where you need to go? Would you ever do that? Would you ever go to Congress and testify? And who's in charge? Because if Congress is denied access to these locations, the door was shut in the face. What can they do to get in these locations? Because that's a big issue.
Yeah, it's like a shadow government you're dealing with.
Well, first of all, I did go to Washington D.C. in January of 2022. I went to the Department of Defense Inspector General. They invited a number of us up there to talk about what we did during our time. In fact, when I got in, they gave me a paper and said, "Oh, you're clear to talk about anything you did. You know, here's a paper, you can sign it." I did. They actually had one of my reports that I did in 1980. And they gave it to me, and they wanted me to talk about that report, about that incident. Unfortunately, that the report they gave me, a 60-page report, was heavily redacted. And although it was 40 some years before, I realized it was my report. I realized some of the information that wasn't redacted. But I asked the DODIG, I said, I can't answer questions. Don't you have an unredacted copy? Now, this is a Department of Defense Inspector General. He says, OSI won't give it to us. That's That's how the government works.
Hmm.
So I said, yeah, I can answer your question, but I don't know what I can't explain everything that I did in that case.
Yeah.
So I spent a number of hours talking to the DIG about my cases. Well, I came back in September of 2022. They had an unredacted copy, and then I answered all the questions. They asked me if I wanted to be able to be in a special group that could to go before Congress to talk about this, and I said, absolutely, I'll do it. Not a whistleblower, just a former member, and it wasn't just me. There were others involved. There was, I think, 25, or whatever it was. At least
just to jump in there quickly, Richard, just while you carry on, how many other Richard Dotys were there that are not in public eye?
Yeah, good question.
Here's the thing that you're going to find out. There's a lot of people, whistleblowers, now we're talking about, that are sitting back that you've never heard of. That's going to tell you a story 1,000 times better than Grush or Elizondo. These are people that had hands-on experience, that were at crash sites, that picked up bodies and put them in body bags, or the pilot that shot down that craft over Alaska.
Okay, I've got one more question. I've got one quick question to follow on from that. So, are you fighting new disinformation?
What do you mean?
It sounds like you're fighting now against new disinformation.
I'm just saying.
If whistleblowers are coming out, but we're getting fed false information still, it seems like we're getting past disinformation agents like yourself and others coming forward trying to whistleblow, but we've got other people now that's trying to fight against that with disinformation coming against them people. Are we seeing that now in this generation?
Well, there are, I think the last count, 63 legitimate whistleblowers that want to come out and talk about what they did. But the government, because there's some of them are still working in the government, some of them still have security clearances, and so they can't. They have to wait for the government to give them permission to come out to talk. It doesn't have anything to do with disinformation. It just has to do with them being able to come out and talk without getting in trouble and ending up in jail because they said something that was classified under special access programs.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what it is. And I had volunteered a number of times. I have been. I sat in the Senate side. You got a House of Representatives and the Senate. I sat with Senate staffers talking about this subject for hours and hours and hours. Not just me, but other former intelligence officers. We want the information out there. What can be released? Not everything can be released, obviously. So it doesn't have anything to do with disinformation or people that are trying to do that. But it's the government. It's not me. It's not Lou. It's the government that is targeting certain people to get them out there to throw mud in the water, muddy the water, to prevent the real subject, the real truth to come out.
But like, who is it? Is it people above the government? Who's behind this? Is it people we don't know about? Who's in charge of all these reverse engineering programs? Everything. Who do these people go to?
He's not going to give us that. Richard's not going to give us that.
Obviously, the government don't really have much
I wish I knew. We know. I mean, it's pretty much proven that in 1951 or 52, President Truman, at the time, created a group called MJ-12. That's pretty much given. I think the government even acknowledged it. Air Force Colonel a few years ago talked about it. Anyways, and over the years, that group has changed names. It could be the Zenith Group now, or the whatever it is now.
Would it have been the Avery? I'm just throwing that out there.
No, the Avery is entirely different.
You see why I asked the question, though?
Yeah, I can talk about the Avery, but that's different. But anyways, this group, NJ-12, or whatever they're called now, they're the ones that control disinformation or the information regarding the subject. I don't know who they are. I wish I knew who they were. They are the people that are in, that we call them the ghosts. The people are locked away someplace that you and I don't know about. But they're the ones that are in control.
Sorry, mate.
Is there anything that keeps you up at night where you think you might have done something wrong here? Thinking about you, your family, and you're getting on a bit when you pass over, that it could affect your family in the future?
There's some things that abductions always worried me, because nobody knows when they're going to be abducted. If they're why the extraterrestrials target them. You're going to hear, and I hope and pray you hear from this Air Force retired Air Force sergeant, female. She's a whistleblower. She's sitting back waiting to talk. She's going to tell you horror stories. I don't care who you are, and not much scares me, but listening to her, it's frightening.
Can we have an example? We want an example.
She was an Air Force. She was in the Air Force. She was an airman. She was she worked in administration. She didn't have any major or big access. She had security clearance, but she didn't have any access to anything top secret. She was at a base in the United States, Keesler Air Force Base, and it was just in Mississippi. And she was leaving the barracks where she lived, and this is many years ago. And she was walking across the parking lot to go to the dining hall, the chow hall, the dining facility.
Yeah.
And she saw this person in front of her, and she didn't recognize it as a person in Air Force uniform or anything like that. It just looked strange. This person walked up to her, and she loses time. She ends up behind a building, 400 or 500 meters away from where she would have been. And when she left, she had on an Air Force female uniform, a blouse and skirt and stockings and shoes and just what they would wear. She wakes up without one of her stocking on her one leg and bruises on her. Well, somebody sees her and calls, and the military police comes, and they thought she was raped. Well, she doesn't understand what happened to her. She doesn't understand that she got abducted by extraterrestrials. That came literally years later when she realized. But this was happening to her all the time. They were taking her fingernails, her toenails, pieces of skin out of her neck, eyelashes, hair, just horrible things. For years they were doing this to her. And then we ended up, and then that part of we ended up being able to help her. I'll leave it at that, because there's a lot of classified information involved in how we could counter abductions. But she's the one that you really need to hear it from.
Richard, I just want to say big thank you, man. You've been going off like constantly, and you've just been firing out question and replying. And we just want to say a big thank you, man. We really appreciate you being here, and it's just amazing to talk to you and have you so open with us.
Yeah, thank you for that.
I asked Shiv to try and reach out. I've spoke to you briefly in a live on X, but I asked Shiv to reach out to get you on TikTok, because I feel like the UFO community try and shun you a little bit, and I think you are a big part, whether they like it or not. That's what I was trying to say to people. And there is information, whether you're lying or not, there is still truth within what you're saying, and we need to get to the bottom of it. One thing I want to know is what was the moment when you realised that UFOs and aliens are real?
1979, at Kirtland Air Force Base, I was investigating the Coyote Canyon incident. I hadn't been briefed into the subject at all. Prior to this, I went through in order to get into counterintelligence, I graduated from college. I was in the regular Air Force. I went to college. Out of college, I got recruited into it. I went through a year of training to be a counterintelligence officer. Very, very demanding training. I mean, it's not Navy SEAL training, but it's psychologically tough, because during the training, they put you in situations where there's no win, but they make you go all the way up to where you can't go any farther. And if you can't do that, you get kicked out of the program. So it's really tough training. Anyways, I get out of the training. I go to Kirtland Air Force Base. During that training, not one single mention of UFOs, not one single mention. The only thing we ever talked about in one class was a lecture about Project Blue Book, Project Grudge, and Project Sign. That was it. That's the only mention in my year training about UFOs. That's it. That's it. Nothing else. And so I go to Kirtland Air Force Base as a counterintelligence officer. There was an incident happened in Powder Canyon where a security guard, a private security guard for Sandia National Laboratories, was checking alarm facilities out there. It's a classified area east of Kirtland Air Force Base, on the base. Sandia National Laboratories is an Air Force contractor. They make things for nuclear weapons. This guard, who was former military, saw a craft land, and all sorts of things happen. The military police calls us out there because we're the investigative arm of the Air Force.
Wow.
And I investigate it. But I don't know anything about UFOs. I don't know that we have ever had anything to do with it. I go back to the office. I do a report. I give it to my boss. My boss says, oh, you need to go. I'm going to set you up for a briefing into a special access program. I said, oh, I knew what a special access program was. I said, okay. So, a few days later, I'm sent over to the west side of Kirtland, to the Air Force Special Security Office. I go in and I get the briefing. I get this briefing on the United States government involvement with investigating and having contact with extraterrestrials since 1947.
Wow.
We talked about, we saw the film, the recovery film of Roswell, everything. Now, that lasted several hours. I left that building driving back to the east where our OSI office was. I pulled into a parking lot and I sat there and I thought to myself, what the hell did I just go through?
Yeah.
I thought, is this a psych op? And I thought, well, is this a psychological operation? Are they trying to send me out? Why didn't they do this during our training?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking all these strange things. So anyways, I get back to the office and I go in and talk to my boss, John. And he said, what do you think? I said, is any of that stuff real? He said, you're going to find out in your career that everything that you saw in there is fact.
Wow.
So beginning that day up until 1988, everything that I saw or did pertained to UFOs, wasn't disinformation, wasn't a psychological operations. It was real because I experienced it.
Can I just ask, on a personal level, how did that affect you? Obviously, like experiencing and knowing all of that information in one go. How did that impact you as a person from who you are today?
Yeah. Were you a religious man prior to this, Richard? Like, did you have religious?
I was raised a Catholic.
Okay. How did it affect that?
Alder boy. Yeah, it did affect me. Religion. I mean, I thought about it, and it didn't affect me psychologically, other than I always wanted to know more. And like, if I brought you in and gave you a briefing on something, you want to know everything about it. Yeah. And that's the way that I am. But you have to go back to training. Before you ever got into intelligence, they gave you all sorts of psychological tests to make sure you weren't an idiot or a dummy or you were going to go crazy, or, I mean, a number of tests. So when you got into the program and you got into all the different training, I think it hardened a person. And so things, and they prepare you for the for this, because if you get into a situation, if you're behind enemy lines or something like that, you can't panic or go psychological nuts because of something. You just accept it and you work through it.
Yeah.
I've got a question about the Men in Black. So a lot of reports of witnesses who've seen incidents, have had visits. Some say they seem robotic, others say they're human. Do you know anything about that? And are they human or are they a bit of both?
Well, there are real Men in Blacks. During my time in, they worked for the 7602nd Air Intelligence Wing at Fort Belvoir, Virginia. They were a special group of clandestine or covert operatives that went above and beyond anything we could do in the field. Now, one of the things that we were OSI agents were federal agents. We had federal authority, and we had to operate under the law. And there's different things you could do to sidestep the law, but we didn't really do those things. If we couldn't do something or we couldn't get information, then they would come in, and I guarantee you they get it. Because they don't follow the law.
No, very hard stuff.
Yes. So they were the real Men in Black. I don't know. There's stories about them being robotic or strange, and I never experienced any of that. I worked with them, not in the field per se, but they came in. I would brief them on something, and then they went out by themselves and did it.
Okay.
Richard, on a completely human level, right? Completely human level.
Yeah, they were human. Yeah, they were completely human level.
Yeah, no, but what? How on earth do Men in Black, UFOs, extraterrestrials, disinformation campaigns, all these crazy things fit in with a family? How did you pull it off?
How did I pull it off?
Yeah, I mean, like, how does it not? How's it not bleed into your life, or did it?
Well, I didn't. I wasn't married. I married late. I never married in the regular Air Force. I never married in college, and I didn't marry until 1985. I've been married 40 years to the same woman.
I think because you had no point.
Yeah, right, exactly. They look at single people, and I was single, and so I didn't have a family. My job as an OSI agent, I worked incredible hours, and they added money. You didn't get actually overtime, but you got a percentage back to you. Anyways, and you get time off when I needed it, annual leave and so forth. It messed me up a lot in my dates because I liked to date women, and sometimes I had a date schedule, and I had to go out and do something, and I had to cancel the date or things like that. But it didn't really affect my family. I didn't have I had a mother and father, a sister and a brother. They lived. My parents lived in Albuquerque, so I could see them anytime I wanted to see them. My dad had retired military, so I had the opportunity to talk to him about certain things, not classified things, but just certain things. So no, it didn't affect me or my family. After I got married in 1985, and again, I just told you, I've been married 40 years to my wife. I'm same woman. There were times when I had to go someplace that she didn't understand. She wasn't briefed into anything, although when I first met her and dated her, and then I proposed to her, she had to get a security clearance before I could marry her. They had to do a background check on her. So
that makes sense.
She tells a story about that.
What would you have chosen? Who would you have chosen? The job or your missus?
I would probably have chosen the missus. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the right answer. Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
right
I
answer.
like the way he looked over his
Yeah.
shoulder. Then he was like,
She's in another room.
I'm
You
sorry,
F
but
one and you get F
your
by the
missus
other.
your missus is a lot more scary than that. I'm guessing. Anyway, the government, the missus, if you say something wrong, she's coming for you.
yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Right,
Look
Dan?
out.
Could I just reverse on, obviously I know we spoke about obviously when you being brought up as a religious aspect, but I kind of want to ask a strange question, if you wouldn't mind asking. Based on your exposure to classified briefings, reports, or encounters, is there any indication that non-human intelligences were interacted with having a concept of God or the divine or like a higher cosmic order? Are they like religious in an aspect? Do you know anything about that?
The only thing I know is what Linda Howell talks about, what she got from EVA 1's handling agent. When they asked EVA 1 if he believed in a God, he didn't understand that. When they explained to him what a God was, he acknowledged, but it was more a universal entity,
Yeah.
a deity that they worshiped.
Right.
And they had their own way of doing that. And they were through these little figurines that was so valuable to EVA 1. There was like a little box with these little figurines in it that he wanted so bad.
I heard that before about those little figures. Yeah.
Yeah, and he would get these things and hold them and I guess pray to them or whatever. I don't know.
But which part? Because we know about you and Linda Moulton. We know that some of the stuff that you gave to Linda Moulton, she ran with, which was disinformation. Which part of it was disinformation that you gave to Linda Moulton?
I didn't give Linda Howell anything other than a document to read. That was the only disinformation. I already explained that earlier. I didn't know what part of it was disinformation.
Yeah.
I got the document 2 hours before she got there. I gave it to her. She read it. I had no idea what was in that document. I never saw it before. It's a presidential briefing document. I don't know if all of it was true. 50%. I would guess about 50% was fact and 50% wasn't. That's what my guess would be.
We do have a TikTok. We do have a TikTok question here. So this is from Imminent UFO. Are you aware of anything coming out in the future that will be mind blowing or exciting?
Yes. When the whistleblowers actually testify in an open hearing and not have any limitations on what they can say, that's going to be earth shattering. I guarantee you it will be.
What do you think the public will respond at? Will it be fear? Will it be oh wow, or will it be betrayal? How will we respond to this? Will we feel like being betrayed? Will it be fear? Is it something to be fearful, or something else, or all of them?
All three, I'd say.
I think a little bit of everything. It depends on the person. If you ever taken any courses in communications in college, the information that's portrayed is accepted and it's rationalized by the receiver, and it's going to be up to them what their mind is going to think about that.
Yeah.
Are you ever fearful that one day you might get dragged in and you might get questioned over the things you did in the past that might not be acceptable now in this day and age?
No, I don't have any fear. I haven't done anything. I've kept the secrets that I'm supposed to keep. The few times that I strayed away from that and I was visited by the FBI, I accepted that I shouldn't have said something. They came and took my hard drive and my computer a couple times, and when they realized that I was telling the truth and I admit to what I did wrong, they just said, don't do it again, and they paid me for whatever. I mean, I have receipts here. I showed at a UFO convention once of FBI checks that they've given me for reimbursing me for.
Oh, that's nice of them.
Yeah. I have made mistakes. I've said things I shouldn't have said, and I was counseled for it. But I know what to say and what I can't say. And there's, people always say, well, you're telling us everything. I'm not telling you everything. Yeah. I can guarantee you there's a lot of information that's up here that I can't.
I want to ask you this question. I have wanted to ask you this question. Is there going to be touch wood, it's not soon, a Richard Doty deathbed confession if you get the opportunity?
Have to see.
I'd have to think about that. I don't plan on. I keep myself in pretty good shape. I got a head cold.
No, yeah, it's gonna. Let's say 100 years from now, Richard Doty dies, so it's going to be 174. Is there going to be a Richard Doty deathbed confession? We have it many times over the years of these people on deathbed confessions. Are we going to get one from you?
Probably, yeah, probably will.
And is it going to be the truth?
Absolutely. There's, I don't know any of you. I don't know any of you. I've heard of some of you. Okay.
Yeah.
You know of me. If I wanted to lie, and make up stories, that's totally out of the norm. You would have known it, and I wouldn't be on this program.
Yeah. No, 100%.
I have told
I agree.
the truth for years and years and years. When I don't know something, I'll tell you I don't know it. I can't talk about it if I can't talk about it.
Yeah.
I don't make things up. I don't disinform people. I was offered a job in 2019 by the United States Space Force where Lou Elizondo worked, to work with him in disinformation. And I said, not no, but hell no. I'll never do that again.
Did Lou bend the knee?
Worked for him. I don't know what he did. You'd have to ask Lou.
Okay.
I've got a question. I was listening to one of your videos, and you said there was a crash in 1949, and a craft crashed, but it was found sometime after, and the bodies were decomposed and stuff.
Yes.
Was that the same beings that was found at Roswell?
Yes.
And they, okay, can you tell us about that? And they got artifacts from inside the craft.
What happened is, let me tell you what I was briefed on in 1979. There was actually 3 different crash sites of the July incident of 1947. There was a lightning storm occurring in New Mexico. Now, I live in New Mexico right now. We have really severe lightning storms. These 2 extraterrestrial crafts, even crafts, are flying around New Mexico in 1947. We think, at least in the briefing, that because of the lightning, they didn't have lightning on their planet. They don't even know what lightning is. That the lightning interrupted their avionics. It caused the 2 crafts to crash.
Wow.
One craft crashes and falls to Earth near Corona, New Mexico, which is north of Roswell. The debris field from the antenna, the back portion of that craft, lands in a Brazil ranch. That's the debris. The second craft ends up miles away, west of Magdalena, New Mexico, in Pelona Peak. That craft wasn't found until 1949. The craft that landed near Corona, New Mexico, was near an archaeological site. An archaeological team from the University of New Mexico found that site and found EVA 1. Okay. In 1949, a rancher was moving his cattle to a higher grazing spot in a very remote area in New Mexico. He comes across this craft, doesn't know anything about UFO. They have no idea what this craft was. Okay. He moves his craft as cows up there. He goes back to his ranch house. 11 days later, he contacts the Catron County Sheriff's Office. 5 days later, the Catron County Sheriff gets horses and goes up to the crash site. He doesn't know what this thing is, but he had a camera and he took a couple pictures. He goes back, and now this is like 30 days later. He contacts the New Mexico National Guard, who contacted Portland Air Force Base, who sent a team out, and the recovery occurred 41 days later.
Wow.
Now, this is 2.5 years later.
Yeah.
So the bodies were decomposed, but they were the exact same entities as the Corona crash. So we knew they were the same creatures.
Right.
Could I just ask a question? Are we humans actively aiming to knock them out the sky as well? Do you know anything about that? Are we involved in knocking some of them out?
I can't talk about that.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, can I ask you a question, because it's in the chat, and just for the TikTokers, my fake name in this live here is Maxwell Anderson, so that is me. They're asking about the Galactic Federation. They think there is some governments that is extraterrestrial that is watching over the planet. It is something that's been spoke about for decades. It's something that I've researched many times over the decades. Have you come across this? Do you know anything about this? Because the followers want to know.
During my time in intelligence, the 12 years I worked, I never heard of any treaties or federations. Now, in the last year or two, I've heard a lot of other people talk about that. So there is a possibility there might be a federation out there that maybe keep an eye on this. That's a possibility, but
Do you reckon
I don't know
anything
anything.
like Andy Kramer or Randy Kramer's rendition of Galactic Federation? Do you reckon it's anything along the lines of that? And would you give any credence to Randy Kramer?
Randy's a friend of mine. We're a fellow via, we have a show.
That's why I'm asking.
And I've had a show with him. I'm not going to, he passed 2 polygraph examinations. In order to get on Gaia, they do a extensive investigation. I couldn't get there if I was some sort of there's a lot more to the secret space program that I know about that I can't talk about. So I'll leave it at that.
Fair enough. That's fair enough.
Do you ever meet up with any of these people you used to work with that did the same job as you, and just sit down, have a pint of beer, and think, we did some terrible things, but we did some good things as well at the same time?
Absolutely.
And sort of speak about it.
Yeah. I'm a member of the Advanced Working Group. And the Advanced Working Group contains retired or former intelligence officers, people I worked with, former military commanders, former DIA, CIA employees. We get together quarterly, and we sit and have meetings, talk about the subject. We sit down and have a pint and talk about the past. Yeah.
And there's another question. There's another question that keeps jumping up here. Do you think there's any plausibility to the prison planet theory?
I heard that. In fact, it's in a book. I read science fiction books, and it's a story about a planet that was a. I don't know. I don't know anything other than what could be in science fiction, but I don't know anything in reality.
Do you think we could be a prison planet? Do you think we could be harvested for whatever?
That's an interesting, really, really interesting subject if you really delve into it, because every one of us are different, right? The extraterrestrials that we've known about or we've had contact with are all the same looking. We are different. Yeah. And I think that's one reason they're coming here, because we're all different. Why is everyone on this planet different? Is it a possibility that we were brought in and placed here, at least our ancestors, for some particular reason? That's the possibility. That's a good question. That's really a thought-provoking question.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a last question before I pass it on. So with your past and everything you've gone through, what is your theory? What is a Richard Doty theory on what's going on?
Well, I think that we have, we've been visited hundreds of thousands and maybe billions of years ago. I actually believe that there have been civilizations on this planet billions of years ago, and there were wars, even nuclear wars, that eliminated us. I think that at one point, Mars was just as full of life as Earth was, and that some of the Martians ended up coming to Earth for a particular reason. And I think we also were we evoluted during our evolutionary process billions of years ago. We went from land to the ocean, and that's why we have life down at the bottom of the ocean. That's Rick Doty's theory.
It's a great theory. It's a great theory. I've also got a great question here, and I need to ask another one because people are asking in the comments. You've got to go with your followers. Ross Coulthard, you know Ross Coulthard?
Yes.
So he mentioned with an interview with Project Unity about a UFO that was so big they couldn't move it. They had to put a building over it. Now, Stephen Gray, we've not spoke about Stephen Gray yet. Stephen Gray alluded to it being in South Korea. I've done videos on it, alluding to it being in South Korea and also being in the B1 bunker. And my reasons to it, some of it being in the B1 bunker. Have you any information on that? And I don't expect you to tell us if you know, but can you just, give us something?
Give us something.
I'll just say that you're on the right track. So I'll just leave it at that.
Cool.
When you say on the right track, Ross or me or both?
Both.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Thank you for that. You've just probably raised the views on that video. Go and check out my video on that one. Go and check out that. Thank you for that one, Richard.
Amazing.
Yeah. No, you can ask away now. Sorry, I took 4 questions there, but I like to say it's not the opportunity to get to questions.
Oh yeah, it's quite humbling actually. Thank you.
Dan, I've got a question from Nebula, who was meant to be on the panel, but she was having problems with her internet. She was asking, are you aware of any covert programs where the government intentionally aims to wipe the slate clean or to restart or reset humanity for control, experimentation, or survival purposes?
Possible false flag 427, yeah.
There. All I can say is that I've heard of a possible project many years ago, but I wasn't a member of it. But I know that there was a reason for that many years ago. So I'll just leave it at that. I don't know, and I don't want. I'm kind of hesitant to talk about details because I don't want to be wrong.
Would that lead in the way of sort of like the whole one world order and things like that? Would you say?
Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Wow.
Richard, there's a lot of people asking in the chat. Do you have any information on the reptilians? Are they, what's said about them? Is there any truth to them? Truth to that? It's being asked a lot in the feed.
The reptilians, they were.
Richard, can I just add on to that, right? Because one of my theories is that reptilians are the people that actually control this planet and actually tell our governments what to do. Do you know if any of that sort of is true or not?
No, I don't know if that's true or not. I just know that the reptilians were added. They were the 7th species of extraterrestrials who were added to the DI list in 1991. They apparently come from the Barnard star system, and that's really the only thing I know about them.
They're not the most pleasant of species, I heard.
No, they're not. They're not friendly.
They'd be deemed as a threat to humanity, as such.
We're being asked in the comments. Obviously, you're 74 years old. You've got a bit of a cold. Are you okay to carry on, or do you want to end it? It's gone midnight here in the UK.
Yeah.
But you've got a lot of followers in. You've got a lot of watchers in the UK. We're touching 400, and it's been consistently 400 people coming in and out, asking questions. Is Richard Doty want to end it and maybe do a part 2 another time?
No, I'm fine. I can go another. It's only 17:31 here. I can go for another 30 minutes if you can.
Yeah. Okay. So there we go. So there's the answer.
Following on to the question about the reptilians not being nice, then you did actually mention earlier about contacting aliens. They may come across all very friendly and things like that. There's also another whistleblower that stated that we have completely upset a race of aliens, which is the Ebens. And he stated that they're actually on their way back to Earth at the moment. Do you know in your own professional sector if we have ignored any other species, and is it a fact that they're not actually all coming to save us?
Well, I can guarantee you that there's hostile species that are not here to save us. In fact, I can guarantee you that President Reagan spoke about them when he took office, and because of an incident that happened that killed a number of military personnel, directly blamed on this one particular species of extraterrestrial. And there were two secret executive orders that the president gave, one to eliminate that particular species, and the second one to develop a defense mechanism, i.e. Strategic Defense Initiative, or Star Wars, to prevent that particular species from invading Earth.
Wow. Could I just butt in there?
Down and had contact. You had contact with a species, didn't you, yourself personally?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I just talk a little bit about that?
Okay, go on.
Sorry.
No, you're right, mate.
Just that contact experience that you had. Could you talk a little bit about that? Like what happened? Like what weapons did you use? What was effective? What wasn't?
I can't talk in details.
Yeah.
It happened in a classified area. There was another escape of a hostile species. It was at a checkpoint between two classified areas. Myself and another person was in a Jeep going, a CJ7 Jeep, going from one place to another. We came up on the gate. We knew that there was a gate guard there earlier. Military person, military police. He wasn't there. When I got out of the Jeep to go investigate, there were obvious that there was evidence of blood and human remains there.
Okay.
And we started checking the area. I was the only one armed. OSI agents always carried a handgun. I encountered it, and then I can't talk about anything after that.
Okay.
Wow. Okay. Could I just ask on like people being engaging with these certain species? I'm sure you're familiar with the Soviet soldiers that got turned to stone, 23 of them. Is that a real genuine case that actually happened? Is that something true?
Well, that's based on a case that occurred inside the Soviet Union in 1985. Yeah. Absolutely. The incident's based on a real incident because the KGB agent that was involved in that incident has spoken at a UFO convention years later. He came to the United States. He became an American citizen. He spoke about it. He didn't go into great details because he was afraid that a lot of details would really upset the audience. So he avoided the gross and details of that incident.
I have a question for you. I have two questions for you from the live audience here, Richard. One is from Imminent UFO again. Are there any archaeological sites associated with UFO and aliens or where we found crafts? And my question to follow on from this is, because there's another one that's mentioned a lot, is do you know anything about the GATE program?
I don't personally know anything about the GATE program. I've heard, but I don't know anything personally about it, no. There are historical sites that because of what was found there, the particular country wasn't all in the United States. One was in France. Made it a historical site, but I don't have the list with me, and I don't know anything in more details than that.
Mm.
What do you think about this that's being found in the under the pyramids at the moment?
That's quite an amazing story, because I've been there. I've been to the pyramids 5 times. Once with Gaia, they set us over there. I did an entire episode on the pyramids and what was under the regarding a diary of a British soldier that was exploring. Remember, at one time, your country owned Egypt or controlled it, and he was down there in the 1930s, exploring it, and he actually got in underground, a tunnel, some locals, and this was in northern Sudan, and the tunnel system led all the way through, and he actually got to what he referred to as a time tunnel, which we would call a Stargate, and that's an episode of Gaia. It was his diary that he had left, and his family lives in Leeds. I went to Leeds. I talked to the family. I got the diary. I did a lot of really close investigations because I didn't want to present an episode that wasn't factual. But it coincided with a lot of things other people have said, and now all these things that are finding under the pyramids coincides exactly what he had in his diary. But remember, this was 1930, and he couldn't explain things technically the way we could now.
Because
let me just jump in one more second. Sorry, we are live, and people are loving the live. And the one that is the saying's being ignored. The question is Antarctica.
Yeah, I was just
anything you can speak on Antarctica. You took a deep breath. I observed that.
I know 2 things, and both of these things at one point were classified, but they were declassified because a Washington reporter posed this question to a Pentagon spokesman several years ago. I'd say 4 or 5 years. I don't remember when. Linda Howell already talked about this, but there were 2 things that I know about that happened in Antarctica.
I want the truth, Richard. I want the truth. Come on,
this
is this one.
Absolutely true.
Come on, we're from Manchester. I'm from Manchester in the UK. We don't accept this. We want the truth.
I love Manchester. I've been there many times.
When are you next coming down? When are you next coming to Manchester? When are you next in Manchester? We want to know that next as well.
In October.
Oh, wow. Okay, right. You've got a community here that'll meet you.
Anyways, I want to say how I want to say this, because I don't want you to interpret it as being
bear in mind, I'm going to meet you in October. I'm going to be seeing you in October.
Yeah, I don't want to say something that I think might be classified. So let me hold off, and I'll have to think about this and do some research. I'm sorry. I don't want to delve into something that could very well be classified.
That's interesting. That answer's interesting.
That answer's brilliant.
We are going to meet you in Manchester in October. You know that, don't you? We're going to have a few beers, and when we drink, you're going to tell us everything, Richard.
Yes.
Can I just budge in for a second? I just want to ask one: are we currently being monitored right now? And are UFO channels like ourselves and the way that we talk about, are we being used as a point for gathering intel for people? And 2, do you reckon that the history narrative we've been given throughout our lives isn't actually the true history? Do you think there's an alternative history that is being pushed under the rug or shoved away?
Yeah.
No, I don't believe in that. I don't believe anything like that. I think we're living now. We're living a life, and this is reality. I personally don't believe in that. I know there are a lot of people out there that think that way, and they have the reasons for it, but I don't think that way.
Okay, cool.
Okay, I'm coming back to the Antarctica thing now. You've had a moment to think. Have you got anything you can share with that?
Okay, let me say this. What I know about Antarctica, there was 2 weapons tested down there. One was, we tested them. I'm not going to say when or anything other than we tested 2 energy directed weapon systems. One was called the Zeus. And Linda Howell it talks about this. Zeus, the goddess, the Zeus. And it caused a massive cavern to open under Antarctica. A massive, I don't know how big, and when that opened, we found a lot of things.
Say so.
So I'll just leave it at that.
Right, Richard, I just want to say something.
Let me break it down. You used a weapon, it opened something, but you can't talk about what it discovered. Okay, no. We'll leave it at that. My
mind is absolutely fired in here.
Right, Shiv wants to ask a question.
We'll get the answer when you've had a few days in Manchester in October.
Yeah, loosen the lips.
Shiv's got a question.
So Mark, who's in the chat, he was contacted. This is quite huge for the UK. So for the first time in the history of the UK, a whistleblower has come forward stating on the Isle of Man, he was in the military. He was reverse engineering craft. Have you heard anything about the Isle of Man and your contact in the UK who used to be a major? Maybe you can speak to him and we can try get more whistleblowers coming forward. Because if we get this started in the UK, because we're trying to get disclosure. We've been in London. We're speaking to news reporters.
That's what we're all trying to do, isn't it? Really, in the UK.
Yeah. So it's quite big for us. Whistleblower coming forward. So I don't know if at some point you can speak to your friend, let him know someone's come forward for the first time, and we can maybe do something in the future. Try to find more whistleblowers in the UK. To be fair, because if that happens,
it's obvious that there's been cooperation between the 2 governments. So
the US involved. So I just want to say that.
Let me say, go back to Antarctica real quick. I'm sure every one of you here are internet experts in Googling things and searching the internet. Just look for Project Medusa. Medusa, MEDUSA. Project Medusa. Just sometime delve into Project Medusa and see what comes up.
I'm more interested in Project Aquarius.
Project Aquarius is old stuff.
I know. I know it's old stuff.
Okay. And let me then real briefly, because we got 20 minutes and I have to leave. We'll go back to Serpil real quick. Let me tell you what the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency's definition of the word Serpil is. Secret extraterrestrial remote planet operation. That is the DIA's. If you Google, if you submit a FOIA request, you know what a FOIA request is, right?
Yeah.
If you submit one, because that was done, and DIA came back with the only information and DIA files regarding Serpil is secret extraterrestrial remote planet operation. Now try to figure out that. If you don't think Serpil was real, well. So, anyways,
was the elements of lies mixed in with the truth with the Serpil story?
Well, I didn't create it, so I can't tell you, but I would guess yes. And I think there was, and now one person came up, a former Air Force, Army intelligence officer said he remembers back in the 60s where we created a deception operation to make the Soviets think that we were in contact with extraterrestrials. Serpil would have been that.
Yeah.
That would have fit perfectly into Serpil.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, this is one more question here. Carl Nell said that he's 100% certain that there is extraterrestrial presence, NHI. Is there anything in your mind that says that none of this is extraterrestrial, ultra-terrestrial, NHI, whatever you... And this is just really clever people, human people creating things, and it's man-made?
100% certain that we've had contact with extraterrestrials, and we had them in our custody. We had their crafts in our custody. I'm 100%. I have no doubt at all in my mind.
Wow. Could I just ask you another question, just to jump the gun? Could I get your opinions on Bob Lazar and possibly Stephen Greer as well?
Oh God, Stephen Greer.
Okay.
You're going to break some apart here now.
Now, Stephen Greer, I worked for Stephen Greer before.
Okay.
Okay? I did unacknowledged.
Is he older than you?
No,
Yeah.
69.
He did.
He's younger.
He's 78, I think. He's 70s.
No, 69. 69.
Is he 69?
Yeah.
I think.
Oh
he's
yeah, trust me,
I
she
don't
will
know.
know.
Anyways, I worked with him. I've had many conversations with Stephen. He's a wonderful, nice guy. He's very dedicated to his profession, both of the physician and to the his goal of getting disclosure out there. Now, Stephen never worked in the government. He never had any access to classified information. Everything that every bit of knowledge that Stephen has comes from other people.
Whistleblowers and all.
Unfortunately, some of those people stabbed him in the back. They provided him with what you would refer to as disinformation. And then he being naive,
went out with it.
What are your thoughts on Stephen's claims of being the one that summoned in the Phoenix Lights in 1997?
Yeah.
That's absolutely. That's bullshit. I know.
I call bullshit on that. I call bullshit.
I know.
That's the title of the live, people.
I know what it was. I mean, people within our working group knows that was a T-13B aircraft, one of ours, being tested.
So how big is that craft then?
By the size of two football fields, two of our football fields.
Wow.
I don't know what your football fields are.
Like big ass.
And where would a craft like that, so huge, be kept?
Grim Lake.
Yeah.
Grim Lake. And in an underground facility, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Maybe in the mountains or something like that.
Could it?
Wellington.
Could it possibly split off into multiple different things to form a bigger craft?
Yes.
Wow, there you go.
Absolutely.
Cool. And what's your opinions on Bob Lazar? That's another one that everyone wants to know.
Bob Lazar. Some years ago, our working group, the advanced working group, got access to an entry control log for Nellis Test and Training Range. The log was from January 1st, 1979 to December 31st, 1990. 10-year period. Every person that had access to Nellis Test and Training Range was in this log. It's an old computer dot metrics printout. I don't know if anybody know what that means.
Yeah.
Big old papers. Yeah. And so we had a plethora of information that we could search. Bob Lazar's name's in there. So he had access to Area 51. Now, what he did out there, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I know he had access.
Interesting.
Nice. Oh, there we go, mate. I'm out of questions now, man. You've depleted me.
We've got 10 minutes left, so let's get some audience questions.
Go for it.
I need to use the bathroom. I need to use the bathroom around there, lads. These are sitting the
So
same spot.
any questions, drop the questions in now. Maxwell
good.
Anderson is my username in the live.
There's been a lot of questions
Oh,
from.
please ask about Skinwalker Ranch.
That's a good one.
What do you think about Skinwalker Ranch? Can I ask you a question on top of that as well? What do you think about Travis Taylor?
Skinwalker Ranch. When I worked for Dr. Putoff from 1994 to 2007, we went out there. That was when Bigelow owned a ranch. I think 1997, I went out there with a team of people from Dr. Putoff's lab. We spent time out there, investigated a lot of different things that were going on out there. I personally never saw anything out of the ordinary. I can't honestly say that, yeah, I saw lights or I didn't see anything. We didn't experience anything strange. We went back there in 1998. The only thing we saw was a ball of light that came out of the mountain and went up in the air. I don't know what that was. Geologists saying it could have been some element or something. So that's all I know about Skinwalker Ranch.
And Travis Taylor, I think he's disinformation, to be honest with you, but that's just my opinion. What do you think on Travis Taylor?
I know Travis, but I'm not going to say I don't know it. It's a possibility, but they have an agenda there. They have to make money, and they make money on the show. So,
I've got a quick question. So what's the so also I believe they have clean energy, that technology for the entire planet. Is there anything more important than that they're hiding that'll benefit our species? Obviously, you don't need to say the technology that'll affect national security, but for our species, medical, clean energy, what have they got?
Well, that's my main peeve. What really upsets me, if our government has developed something from the extraterrestrials that will help science, that will help cure cancer or cure whatever disease, or better our energy on this planet, they need to bring it forward and let us have it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm for that 100%. But I personally don't know that they have it. I mean, I don't know.
Let's make sure we ask the questions. Let's spend the last 10 minutes asking the questions, because they've supported us all the way through it.
Richard, there's been a lot of people asking if you know is there any connection between Bigfoot and UAPs, UFOs?
I personally don't know. I've heard a lot of stories. I've heard people talk about it. I've heard. I've seen programs about it, but I personally don't know whether there is any connection. There are cases where, and I can tell you 2 cases. One in New Mexico. A fisherman is fishing in a remote area northern New Mexico. He sees a craft flying around the lake, a land. He doesn't. 30, 40 minutes later, he sees a Bigfoot.
Wow.
It comes right in front of him. Doesn't have a camera.
Right.
It's trying to make contact with him, but he's scared. He doesn't know what it is, so he runs away. Secondly, in Montana, a case more popular. It's been on a television program where looked like a UFO lands. These 2 people are walking. Hunters. I'm not sure if they were hunters. They encounter a Bigfoot. So. Are they connected? I don't know. It's a possibility.
I've got a question. Someone's asked, have we travelled to any other planets, and which ones are they? Do you know anything about that?
No comment.
Okay. All right.
I'll follow up with astral projection and people who communicate with aliens. Do you know anything about astral projection? And there are conspiracies that the government uses people that can astral project, not only to project and see things, but also to protect buildings from people who try and do astral projection to get into buildings and facilities to try and see what's inside there. So you've got like a security of astral projectors with people
7
coming
in
in to
particular.
try and go in there. Do you know anything
7
about
in
that?
particular that woke in Area 51. I think 7 of them, is there?
Yeah.
The United States government has developed devices and techniques to protect classified areas, and I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
Would that be anything to do with these things that look like dementors that are flying around that we've seen on certain clips, where you've got helicopters chasing orbs, and then there's these things that look like helicopters, but you look a little bit closer and they're not helicopters. They're something completely different.
Next question. I'm not going to touch that one.
I've got one here. There's a pinned comment. Is the moon a satellite, and is there something on the backside of the moon? Basically, do you know anything about the moon?
There are bases on the. I'm friends with remote viewers, former military remote viewers, and I've watched them remote view the dark side of the moon, and there are structures there, whether they're bases, old bases, but there's some structures there on it, and I had the pleasure of talking to Neil Armstrong many years ago. He was friends with Dr. Puthoff. Neil Armstrong would come to the lab in Austin, and I actually went into his room when he was sitting there. He was involved in a project, and I asked him. I said, pleasure to meet you. Can I ask you some questions? And he said, yeah. What do you want? And I asked him questions. He said, that doesn't leave this room. Now he's dead now, so I can. He said, there's life on other planets. We saw things on the moon that we can't explain, and there's buildings on the backside of the moon.
Wow.
And so he was there, so he would know. So I take that to the bank.
So we've got 2 minutes left before the live ends. I'm going to ask you my last question of the night, and that is there anything that you've done in your past with regarding your job that you regret?
Yes. I regret that during the Paul Benowitz operation, Project 7 Lambs, that I didn't put in my 2 cents in the operational plan. If I had to do that all over again, I would have tried to convince headquarters to change some of the things that they put in the operational plan. Because some of the things we did, I personally regret. And I say I didn't personally do them, but we had people on the team that did things that I think we could have done it differently.
You see, the way you're talking there, you're reaching out. I'm good at reading body language and reading people, so like you're telling truth with what you're saying tonight.
I believe so.
And that will be looked at. Obviously, people will be looking at the technology now. They'll be looking at your face recognition, how I think you're trying to release some truths, and you've spent the majority of your life telling lies, and people now are not believing the big bad wolf telling the truth, and that's what it is. So that's me. Nice to have met you, Richard. I'm going to sit in and let the end live with whoever else for questions. But thank you for coming on, and I hope we have a part 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to ask one more thing. It's just to close off. How comes after all these years of your work and your line of duty, why now? Why now change the foot?
Yeah. Well, my NDA expired in October 1st of 2002. And after that, I was still working for Dr. Puthoff, and I still had security clearance. I was still working on DARPA projects. After 2007, I was free to talk and do anything I wanted, and that's when I went out and got jobs with film companies, and moved into this civilian role of trying to get disclosure out there.
Fantastic.
Have you worked with Spielberg on the new one, Disclosure, coming up?
Age of Disclosure.
The Steven Spielberg film. I think it's called Disclosure. Not the documentary, but the movie.
It's called The Disc. It's called The Disc, innit?
I've had some connections to that. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
Right.
Richard, thank you very much for sort of spending an epic amount of time with us.
Yeah.
Usually we don't get this sort of privilege when we're talking to, you know, the special people of the UFO movement, especially people that worked in your level of government. So I just personally want to say thank you. I feel like I've learned a lot more about you. And I believe you're definitely on the right path. And I'm so glad that you actually came to this open forum so that we could kind of get a better idea about you. And, you know, just thank you so much. It's been great.
Well, this is a way for me to promote myself and to try to convince people out there, like maybe the UFO around the world guy, that I tell the truth. There's no lies in everything I say. And if I can't say something or I don't know something, I'll tell you I don't know it or I can't talk about it. And I'm trying to get disclosure out there, just like everyone in this room is, and all your viewers on TikTok. And that's why I do come on these shows. I don't have anything to hide. The information I can't tell you is there's a reason for that. And, you know, I am a down-to-earth person. I teach gifted children high-level mathematics, and I used to teach online for the Department of Defense and Continuing Education program, military people going for college degrees. Now I just do gifted kids, and they are brilliant children who I teach advanced math to, and I really enjoy doing that. I enjoy teaching, but I enjoy doing this because I'm educating people. I hope I am on things that you want to know. So I appreciate you inviting me.
Yeah. I feel people have probably targeted you in the fact that maybe you're because you're doing this the way that you're doing it now, which is absolutely fantastic. You're threatening their agenda. That's why you're kind of getting this wolf pack mentality at you now. And I think after this interview, now I've talked to you, I feel like you've changed my mind. I think you're a top bloke, mate, and I'd love to share a beer with you one day.
Absolutely,
I'll give you my opinion. I'm never going to fully trust you, but that's because you were so good at your job. But I think that I reached out to Shiv to get you on here and he did a great job getting you on here. It's all thanks to Shiv that you're on here. But you're an integral part of this UFO and alien topic, and people that dismiss Richard Doty are missing out because there is a behind the scenes that you can show us a little bit. And there is soon enough, you're at an age now where you might pass on. There are going to be new Richard Dotys, and you'll have taught us something where we can actually keep an eye out for people that may be doing the things that you were doing back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and so on.
Definitely education.
And I want to say this as well. You probably did a lot of good work, actually, for national security reasons. And you was probably played yourself, and that's a big thing. If the actual truth, when it comes out, if it is sinister, it will affect you as well, and that's the thing. It will affect you. You're not going to be safe from it. You're going to be part of us. It's going to affect you just as much as anyone else. So that's another thing that people that do this job need to be aware of. And I understand why you do this job. And I respect it. There is national security reasons, I understand that. But we need to know that there's an alien presence on this life, ultra-terrestrial, NHI, whatever you want to call it now. There's something out there.
100%.
There's one last question I'd like to ask Richard. So there's a group of us in the UK that are trying to fight for disclosure at the moment. We're holding events like we were shouting and screaming in London last week. We're contacting MPs, local media outlets, things like that. Is there any advice that you can give to help us along the way, basically? Because at the moment we're just getting doors shut in our faces and things like that.
There's a promoter, a lady by the name of Patty Known in the UK. I think she's in Birmingham. I'm pretty sure. Who I speak to a lot. I met her at Blackpool during Awakening in 2022. a wonderful person. She's involved in the trying to get disclosure out. She tried to create a group similar to MUFON over there, right. and so she's active, and I certainly help her every way I can. And I always try to, when I go to the UK, I try to meet up with her. But she is one person I know. And there's another person in Edinburgh, in Scotland, a guy, Albert, guy kind of looks like Sean Connery. I can't think of his name, but he's in Edinburgh, and he's really a movement, a voice in the, and he's a former, I think he's former British Marine.
Nice.
Older guy. He's probably yeah.
Brilliant.
So I keep track. I keep in touch.
Lovely, thank you.
Any last questions, I think, before we wrap up? We'll leave him to go about his day. I need to get to bed. I've got work in the morning. I can't just study UFOs and talk to Richard Doty. I've got something to say in work tomorrow anyway. Oh, I spoke to Richard Doty last night. Yeah. Oh, and they'll be like, who's Richard Doty? This is the thing. That as much as we think the UFO topic's relevant and people know about it, it's such a small community because you put your phone down, you go and speak to your people in your household. They have not got a clue what's going on. So this is why it's so hard to get the truth out there, because the majority of the people on this planet have no idea what's going on. Even though there's millions of us, there's billions of people that have no idea and they're not interested. They watch the Coronation Streets and they're not bothered. They're not bothered. So that's the fact.
Thank you so much, mate. Legend.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Cheers,
Richard,
Richard.
Richard, I've got to ask, because I've got many people on here. We've got Jason Sands that's come on TikTok. We've had Ashton Forbes come on TikTok for me asking him, are we going to get a Richard Doty TikTok account?
I'll look into it. Okay. I will look into it.
You can even name it the Disinformation infamous Richard Doty. Just put it in there, put it in there. And I'll tell you something now. If you create a TikTok account, you'll have thousands of followers.
Overnight,
thousands of followers.
Yeah.
Okay.
You've kept a consistently high live viewing on tonight, so you know. People are interested in you, so do
definitely
it.
Want to hear what you have to say.
There's more to life than X. Let me tell you that. There's more to life than X.
I'll give you some advice on TikTok. But yeah, cheers. Thank you. Have a good night.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Richard.
Good night, everyone.
All the best.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.